Hi guys, I'm Becca Otis from Five Lines Pottery, and I'm located in Van.
And I'm Ryan Durbin from RD Ceramics, located in Highland Heights, Kentucky.
And welcome to Wheel Talk. Yay!
I was gonna make this like a smartless start to a podcast. I was like, Becca, hit record. We're gonna start without Ryan.
I already did that. I already hit start. I hit record.
Yeah, it's recording.
I saw.
Be prepared, guys.
Cold open.
Be prepared for Prince Ali.
Way to hit that. Just like without entrance. I feel like all of us just completely changed our tone. We were chatting away, and then the timer is in front of me, and I was like,
you can exit out of that so you don't see it.
Oh, yeah, the timer.
That's just to notify you, to let you know that you are being recorded.
To legally tell me.
Yeah.
It's legally binding. Oh, by the way, we really can't go over 2 hours because we have 2 hours and 9 minutes left on our record thing.
Buzzsprout.
On Buzzsprout. So we really can't go over 2
hours. But it doesn't expire within...
Yeah, in like 3 days.
Okay, so it'll expire. It'll re-up before Saturday.
Well, let me look. Actually.
We should also just probably limit it to 2 hours for the sanity of people listening.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, it expires on January 28th, and January 27th is Saturday.
Shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know what I think you pay X number of dollars for an extra hour, right?
It's $4.
Because I've done that plenty of times. Because
Rebecca is not worth $4.
Oh, really?
Okay?
Fair. I understood what was being said at the beginning, Becca, before I knew. No, I didn't realize that if you schedule stuff, I assumed you paid for it when it went live.
No. Yep. By upload, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's frustrating to me.
It is frustrating.
Which I understand. I understand on their end why that is, but I just want to batch things and move on with my life.
It'd be cool if they had like a yearly plan. It'd be cool if they had a yearly plan so that you could just like batch what you're talking about, you know?
I like that. We should suggest this. I'm gonna not go down the rabbit hole of podcasty nerdy things because I feel like there's 1% of all of our listeners who will actually care about that, and everyone else will be like, okay, guys, can we get? I
mean, I'll have some podcast questions, but it's not going to be that specific to Buzzsprout and what you use and how you go about booking guests and stuff like that. We're not going to go into that. But
well, what are we going to go in, Ryan? I don't know. I'm like, oh God, is this how I make other people feel now? I'm like, I'm not in control. The thing is,
I wrote notes for this about an hour ago. So
I don't write notes.
And Becca doesn't have notes at all.
I don't read them.
Spoiler alert, guys! I never have notes.
Well, you don't have questions at all of like what you're going to ask these people or anything like that?
I mean, I have ideas. I get to know people before. Like if it's not somebody I've directly gone out and asked, if it's somebody who either got referred to me or suggested or whatever, then I don't ever like book a call with them until I have like watched them on the internet for a while. Right. And so then I get to know them via at least the internet life. And so I have like an idea of what I want to talk about or like questions of like, okay, how does this work in your life? How does this work? But I don't necessarily have them.
So you have like bullet points to maybe go to if you're
nothing's exactly written down.
Okay.
It's just there.
Welcome to Ryan Durbin.
See, I would have thought you would have definitely had notes or some kind of bullet points because you interview people on every single one. So not with the launch now, but most of them. So I'm like, with this cadence of having to interview them so frequently, I would expect that, especially with your like analytical and detailed, So I'm like,
mentality. I know, right?
You're probably.
I like to keep you on your toes. I keep you guessing. You don't know.
But that makes for a better conversation, I guess, as well.
And that was the thing for me. I feel like I've listened to other shows that are very, this person this person prepared this list of questions that they wanted to get through. And there's one of two things that I hear come from that. Either it's not an organic conversation. It's either like, ask this question, get the answer, ask the next question, which doesn't necessarily connect to what they were just talking about, but you're just going through the list. Mm-hmm. Or it just sounds like, I don't know, it just sounds forced. It just, the shows I listen to, and these aren't pottery related necessarily, but just in general, I feel like I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the ones I hear that I can, when I can tell there is prep, then it's weird to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure NPR does plenty of prep, like, you know, how stuff works and great. This
American there's a lot of that.
There's plenty of prep in there, but it still feels fluid. So, yeah. I mean, sometimes I crash and burn on that, but you know.
But that's where you can edit it out, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, if I crash and burn, it's like the whole conversation that I'm not doing that much editing. The editing I'm doing is like this pause when I've just stopped to think for, you know, like things that as we talk in real time sound normal, but then when I listen back, when you're just listening to audio in your headphones, it gets really annoying.
Obvious.
Or something like that. Yeah. Like I'm acutely aware now of how many filler words I'm using. I'm trying very hard not to say like, you
I've
know.
noticed that more than I do, and I still do it, but it's whatever.
I think we still do it, but also when you listen back at the conversation and you're not editing, it definitely makes you reevaluate the way that you speak. So I think that me and Ryan actually use a lot less filler words than we would normally, because we have listened back on a few things and been like, oh, shit.
Oh, absolutely. I did the same thing with photography, right? Like editing my own work, I would start to see the same mistakes over and over again and be like, okay, I need to make a concerted effort to fix this thing because I keep editing this thing.
Right.
Same thing.
Or choosing not to take the photo because storage is not the issue. You just take an endless number of them because you can filter through them, but it saves you time not having to go through those
also
shit ones, I guess. Or ones that look the exact same from A to B.
Yep. Did the sound just change for anybody else, or is that just me? See, like, this is what we should edit out.
I don't think so. Did it sound any different to you, Becca?
Yeah, you have like some weird background noise on yours.
Ryan sounds like he's on a plane.
The vent's on above my head.
Fucking
what the fuck am I gonna do about that?
Rookie mistake. Would you start a kiln before this recording?
Your house. Come on.
I did that the first year of the pod. I was so nervous the first year of the podcast about like getting it right and making sure the audio sounded good and all this. I read all of the dumb top 10 ways to start a podcast and whatever.
You know what
else.
I think it probably just changed again. Did it sound different now?
Yeah.
Yes. Still
That's
hear
because
the
I
vent.
just changed it to my mic. It's actually on the mic now. It's because the last one we did, Josh was here and we didn't have the mic because we were just doing it through the computer.
We're professionals, guys.
Well, that's what we would have figured out before Becca just jumped on here and started recording.
Well,
don't blame it on Becca. Don't try.
I just jumped in the call and she said we're recording. I could have figured that out. I don't know.
Oh, you wouldn't have figured it out.
We can still totally hear the vent.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Oh, microphone's that sensitive? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't even have a microphone because I'm using the MacBook speakers because I'm in Seattle right now at Andrew's house. So, yeah. Boom.
Nice.
Exciting things for the
Becca's
people to
professional with the pop filter thing on there and the
see, but like I want to change. I'm trying to resist the urge to spend money I don't need to spend because I have a perfectly functioning mic, but I just don't like when I'm recording for a photography course or something and I use this, but it's a video recording. I don't like the visual break of the fact that like half my face winds up behind this black circle that nobody can see.
Thing is, you can't see my mic, right?
Right.
It's literally right. It's 3 inches below my finger, so you can't see it because it's low enough.
This is where there's an inappropriate joke to talk about what Ryan's trying to point to off camera. But
so if you put it, I don't know if you could put it closer to your computer or prop your computer up so you can't see. I mean, the pop filter's obviously going to be in the way.
But the whole point is to be right into it because of the type of mic it is. I got told by an audio professional friend that I'm supposed to be like a fist away. So
yeah.
I listen.
Not that.
I'm a very good student, guys.
Clearly.
It's better than having one of those headsets that has the thing coming down.
The gamer set?
Yeah.
Ooh.
You're saying
nice.
I should not buy
I don't
one,
think that would look good.
But I could take all of your customer service calls.
Yeah.
You could do it hands-free. You could be on a walking treadmill while you're doing it.
All the things.
Yeah.
Until I got winded, because that wouldn't be good for audio.
Right. I think you should actually do your podcast on a walking treadmill, like one of those ones. And
just got one of those.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Fun.
She's been using it up in the room.
Oh.
You can't run on it though. It's very limited, but I think it can go up to 3.5 miles an hour, maybe. It's not a full treadmill. It's like a walking. I
understand, but why did they need to put the limit on it? Like, so why not have a multifunctional?
Because it doesn't have railings. You can't do something fast if it doesn't have railings.
Yeah, there's no railings.
It's a safety issue.
But you could easily have one that could, like, this is, okay, to get into, like, actual design of a tangential subject for people that make things. Like, from a design standpoint, it's not that difficult to put railings that easily come on and off so that when you want to run, you put the railings on for safety. And then when you're working, you take them off and slide your, like, I like objects that are multifunctional.
Rebecca, have you met the population of the United States?
There's probably something about having a face on it too, right? Because just having railings up, it would probably.
It would have to have the railings there all the time, or else they'd get sued. Because they'd be like, "I broke my neck." Well, why did you break your neck? Because I didn't put the railings up.
I was running and writing my email at the same time.
Or you clicked one of them in, but not both of them in, so like it was a faulty clip or something.
I was at the airport yesterday, and I had Lloyd, obviously, and the guy was like, "You need to make sure you take your cat out before it goes through the X-ray machine." And I was like, "People don't?" Like,
did you just walk through with him holding?
Yeah, I just held him, but I was like, "People don't take their fucking animals out?" And he was like, "You would be surprised." And I was like, "I bet you I wouldn't. I bet you I fucking wouldn't." Like, yeah, let's just pump our cat with radiation as it just goes through this fucking machine.
How strong is the X-ray machine?
Not to imagine. I was just gonna say, not to mention, like, what's the cat gonna do as soon as it gets it? Like, I can just picture
it would just freak
any
the fuck
animal
out,
coming close to the little, like, wavy
down
spinal things, being like, "What the fuck?" and seeing them trying to run against the
cat carrier.
Or anything. I was picturing them outside of the carrier trying to run against the treadmill portion and just being in place the whole time, like the cat is on the treadmill. I blended all these together.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was a cartoon visual.
Yeah, no. He also said that, I was like, "Oh, I'll just carry him." And he was like, are you going to be able to carry him? You could tell that he had some fucking trauma. He's like, last week, somebody lost their cat in the fucking security, like, because they couldn't hold on to him enough.
I mean, Lloyd's not an easy cat to hold on to. Maybe he was already drugged by that point, but
he's easy for me to hold on to.
Okay.
But I mean, like, you just grab him by the neck and pull him out. You know, it's.
And he went back into the carrier just fine, or was that?
No, he did not. No. He was like, "I don't want to go back in there, bitch. What are you doing?" Like, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I got him in, but it was rough. He had never used this carrier before, so he literally just like climbed right in, and then once he figured out that it was his like cage of doom, he was like, "Nope." So that should be a fun ride home. Anyway, going back to Ryan's list.
Right.
What about my list?
Oh, you should probably introduce yourself.
That was the first thing on it. How do you like to introduce yourself, Rebecca?
Oh God. Now I fully understand how I make people feel, because I never thought that was a difficult question. And now you just asked it to me. And I was like, I don't have an elevator pitch. My name is Rebecca Ickes Carra. I host the Maker's Playbook podcast, if we want to put it in terms of podcasts. I'm a Scorpio. I like long walks on the beach. And no.
I was like, how is a podcast a Scorpio?
No. Now I understand why people struggle with this, because you have to like pick which portion of yourself you're going to introduce, right? It's do
you do pottery?
Sometimes. I still consider myself a hobby potter, while Francesco is the production potter.
That's your husband.
That is my husband. Mio marito, if you want to be specific. I've been practicing. I had my Italian class today. Like in terms of throwing skill set, you know what I mean? Like, it's embarrassing the amount of stuff I put on a shelf compared to him in an hour. So we go with hobby potter. However, that's starting to shift a little bit. So for people that don't know me, for the past 14 years, I've been a full-time event photographer. I've been self-employed for basically my whole adult life, which is bananas to think about. But that's what happens. Right? Right? That's what happens when
it's also depressing to think about if you ever need to change your like future.
I'm trying really hard to like this year make not every podcast episode I have on my podcast be about healthcare. So I'm trying very hard. Yeah, so I call myself a recovering event photographer, because I am slowly stepping away from weddings and events. Hot information, headline news item.
Breaking news.
That's the phrase I was looking
for. Carra.
Also Carra Terra.
Carra Terra. I knew I'd mix it up.
No, still not. The second time.
Carra Terra.
There we go. There it is.
Carra Terra.
Breaking news in the Carra household. Oh gosh, side note. So many people, I didn't realize that so Carra Terra is our ceramics business name. Carra is our last name. My married name, Francesco's last name. And
he's Italian.
He's Italian. I'm historically Italian. He's like, we met in Italy Italian.
Yeah.
And
I tried to get him on here.
I know it was not. I enjoyed that invitation, and I was like, you guys, he's not even been on my podcast. He is a opposites attract. How about that? We'll put it that way. He's a quiet. Well, he's not exactly a quiet guy if you get him going on certain subjects, but he's more of like a one-on-one and not a one to however many thousands of people that listen to your podcast, and he has no idea who they are and will never meet them. May or may not. That was the funny thing last year at NCECA, is that people walked up to him and were like, "Oh, Francesco, you do all the cooking." And he's like, I mean, I do. That's a true statement, but why do you know that? And I was like,
and who are you? What's your name?
I might talk about that on the internet sometimes.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I didn't know that naming our company Carra Terra would make so many people start calling me Carra.
Oh.
So now I can like field emails based upon who's actually read the website, like spam. It's really easy to filter out spam emails.
Nice.
Oh yeah, because I'll say, "Hello, Carra."
Exactly. I'm like, nope, that's not it actually. Funny story. So yeah.
What's the Terra part of it? I feel like I have heard this before, but
Sure, for sure. So Carra is our last name, but in Italian, caro means beloved. Or also expensive, depending on how you want to translate it. And then terra, much like Spanish, is earth. And so, it's ceramics. So beloved earth, expensive dirt, whatever way you want to take it, both work. And visually, it's really nice because like the double R's and the A, the letters all line up. I got all graphic design on it.
Very nice.
Yeah. So yeah, it was too good of a storyline and too good of a like linguistic thing. Francesco didn't want to use his name for the business at all. And I was like, I hate naming things, but this is brilliant. So sorry, this is it.
Yeah, and the abbreviated like CT ceramics or CT pottery, like I don't know.
Well, our logo is a C. So my backing way the hell up. My undergrad degree is in graphic design. And so then he had some ideas for like the logo and things like that. And then I always have loved playing with typography and like making letters make other things. And so our logo is the letter T and the letter C, but it looks like a pot.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a T on top of a C for people to visualize.
Right.
So yeah, so we had some fun with it. So, but yeah, so the ceramics and we met because I got into an artist residency program in Italy, and then he was working where I was. So ceramics and photography together are literally my whole life. Because then between the podcast and then teaching, so now the podcast, the Maker's Playbook podcast grew into teaching artists how to take better photos of their work. So that's what I do.
So do you see the podcast as like a subset of your photography I want to say photography business, but it's not event photography, but it is still part of your photography expertise. Mm-hmm. So do you kind of see it that way in relation to, the time and effort you put into it?
That's a great question.
The type of mission you have for the podcast and the styling systems and things like that.
There's two legs to the podcast. On the one hand, I have always, I think the people who survive being self-employed the longest, and Becca, correct me if you have a different opinion, but I think we are naturally curious people. I think you have to be. You have to like want to figure shit out, right?
Or you're just scared as shit.
or that. But like you have to constantly figure things out. That's all we do all the time, right? Like that's what we do. And so the first and foremost, I started a community studio like in, I don't know, 2016 or something like that. Like very much the story everybody would say in terms of not realizing I was like looking for therapy and found therapy, right? Like
you said you were in a community studio, or you started a community studio? You were in
No, I was in one. Dear God.
I thought you said started, and I'm like, what? I didn't know this story.
So I first got into throwing in 2010 when I lived in the UK, and I was working with at-risk 8 to 12-year-old kids in this amazing after-school art center called Kids Cabin with a K. I was in Newcastle, just side note for anybody who is in the UK listening, because all the Americans are going to picture like Queen's British accent. Not where I was. I was in the north of England, which is lovely and wonderful. It very much reminds me of the Midwest, very blue collar, completely different accent. You could YouTube Geordie accent, like GEO, like the word, like the name Geordie accent. Sometime YouTube it. It'll be real entertaining.
We're gonna do it right now. You keep talking.
So it was there that I first got introduced to wheel throwing. There was a ceramics room. There was a woman who, so different full, and also frankly, it was the first place that I got introduced to full-time working artists, right? Like I didn't know any full-time self-employed artists in the US coming out of undergrad. So it was there that I was introduced to the concept of people as adults with families, reasonable career, yada, 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 being artists. And then also working with clay. But then the program that I was in for that ended. I came home. I started my photography business. There's a million different stories we could go through there. But then after 6-7 years, photography in today's day and age is mostly sitting at the computer, right? I got into events and photography because of connecting with people and wanting to capture personalities and things like that. But the majority of my time was spent at a computer. So I was looking for a way to get back into some messy art medium. and I was living in Chicago, and I got into a beginning wheel throwing class at the Lincoln Square Pottery Studio and Learning Center. Shout out to that amazing community for anybody that's in Chicago. And I started, at a community studio like so many other people. And then the owner of that studio told me about this residency program in Italy. And then that's where Francesco and I met. But this is a very long-winded answer to your question about the podcast. I just realized where this actually started.
I was like going back. I was like, what was the question?
Where did we start with this?
Okay, are you ready for the accent?
Do it. Is it going to come through on
the local accent? I'm proud to come from Newcastle, and the city welcomes tourists and visitors of every kind, everywhere, near and far. I hope you enjoy your stay, and if you're not sure you've understood this clearly, please listen every word again. Geordies love having visitors from all over the world, but it's difficult to understand what they're talking about.
That sounds very African and like...
That is a very... That is not a thing.
Sorry, Mara. Can you do a really thick Geordie accent? So it's like if you were to say like I'm going into town, with a Geordie accent that would be I'm would be replaced with am. Going would be replaced with ganning. I'm ganning. Yeah. Into town would be tune. That you would find it. Okay. And if you put the essence. Yeah. So it should flow with no gloss stops. I mean, just I'm getting into tune. I'm getting into tin.
There it is.
I'm going into tin?
I'm getting into tune. Like, so the only one, I can't fake it. The only thing I can say that in like a Geordie accent is the kids would always say, I don't know. And it was, I did not. Like, what?
Holy shit.
Right. We're still all speaking English here, right? But anyway, yeah. So it's a whole, just to point out, it's
very country. It's very country.
And also Scottish.
And Scottish, yeah.
Is very close to where the prior border of Scotland, England was. But anyway, the point being, Ryan asked about how I envisioned the podcast being a part of anything. And the point was, like, as I was at the community studio, because I was already self-employed, I was having a lot of conversations already with artists that this was a hobby. They were trying to get into selling. We were having a lot of business conversations. But then I was also seeing a lot of people online who were full-time, and knowing what I already knew about being self-employed, being like, okay, hold on, something's not adding up here, right? Like, how are people making 12 pots in an hour and then doing a shop update and selling out, doing a shop update however every few months and selling pots out and also paying for like a mortgage? Right. Like I was like, something's, so I just got really curious about like, how does this actually work? And I was getting more and more curious about it because I was getting more and more interested in clay and wanting to spend more time in it and wanting to like make it more of a part of my life and trying to figure out, okay, how does this work financially, to be blunt about it, between photography and clay and all of this type of stuff. So the podcast really started in just wanting to have the conversations around like, how did you do this? How does this work? How, why, let me take it apart and put it back together thing. And that's what's really cool about it is I get to have those kind of conversations with people I would have never have expected to say yes to having that conversation. Right. Like, when I emailed East Fork out of the blue and was like, hey, does anybody on the team want to talk to me? I run this podcast. You've probably never heard of it. And then Alex Matisse is like, yeah, I'm available. I was like, oh, really?
What?
Wait, what?
I thought you run the show. Like, you have time to do that?
Shit. That's a funny episode for anybody to listen to because I have friends who have last names that like are not connected to anything special, right? Like a friend of mine, her last name is Kohler. She's not a part of the like Kohler Fawcett dynasty. She's not the heiress to anything. So I don't think anything of it when somebody has like a last name that's recognizable.
Shut up. He's shut up.
Yep. Oh, you got to go back and listen to that episode, Becca, because I recognize that. I put 2 and 2 together on air. It's recorded.
Oh, I didn't know that until that episode, I think.
Yep.
That's how I knew.
How closely is he related?
He's his great-grandfather.
Oh my God.
And for anybody who hasn't put 2 and 2 together yet, we're talking Henri Matisse, like the Matisse. Yep.
The Matisse, like artist, the Matisse.
Also, apparently, I'm not going to get this right. Somebody go back and listen to the episode, because like on the other side of his family, in my mind, it's Duchamp, but I don't think that's right. There's another really freaking famous artist who's like a grandparent it's like a whole dynasty. It's a thing. Mm-hmm.
And also, if you're looking for Matisse, it's Henry to everybody that doesn't
I was going to say, I
have
thought
an
it was
accent.
Henry, but I didn't want
It's
to
with an
act like
I.
I knew what you're talking about.
It's with an I, isn't it?
It's Henri?
Yeah, I thought he was French. Am I losing my mind?
I'm just talking about the people that don't speak in French accents. Like, you know.
It was for the sake of spelling. I told you I took my Italian class today, guys. Fun fact, Italian in the US, we have like spelling class. You don't have that in Italian because everything is spelled the way it sounds. So when I ask Francesco to spell something for me, he just repeats the word back to me slowly, which is not infuriating at all.
No.
So anyway, I digress. But yeah, that was the podcast started because I wanted to have those conversations. And I'd be having those conversations regardless. What's cool is that people let me record them and then everybody gets to hear them.
Right.
Yeah.
Or at least a few hundred people.
Do you feel like it gives you this, it gives you the access, but it also gives you kind of, for selfish reasons, you get the ability to ask these questions.
Oh God, yeah.
You wouldn't feel comfortable at all asking, but you know that it's like okay to ask because you're doing it for the greater good of the audience hearing it because you know it's valuable. So it's like, I really want to ask this question, so I'm going to just fucking ask it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Or at least like I wouldn't necessarily like DM or email somebody this long list of questions, right? Like it's things that the clay community is really amazing because it is very much a community, but also, you know, you don't want to pop into somebody's DM with like, how do you do this? How do you do that? What about this? What about that? You know, like that's a lot of work to ask on whoever you're sending a message to. Right. And people are often happy to help, but you also have to kind of like read the room and how much time someone's going to spend responding freely. Whereas I feel like on a podcast, it's like you were saying, they know there's a larger audience out there, so they're happy to answer these questions. And I absolutely get the benefit of
and
getting.
It's not lost in the shuffle like a DM. It's adjacent to a bunch of other crap that they have to read and look at, and it's work for them. But when it's audio and they can just talk, they just got to show up at a time and talk. It's way less effort, in my opinion, as long as you're already there to just answer a question that's asked of you, and you can choose how you want to answer it. If you want to be, very open, or if you want to be like partially open and kind of like skew away from it, or however you want to decide to go about it. And I would suspect most people are open to just say, sure, let's meet. And they don't ask, hey, do you have questions for me beforehand so I can come prepared? Or I don't know. Have you had any of those experiences where people want to know the questions beforehand?
I've had that a few times, especially when I first started. I think people are naturally nervous, right? Like I've just taken off my sweater because I'm sweating a little bit already at my Henry pronunciation. But
no, you did it right. I'm just talking like we already talked about the United States being dumb, me being one of them. So
I was about to say Henry, and I was like, I'm not gonna act like I know who this person is. I pulled Henry out of my ass because I think that's the name, but I don't really know because I don't really know artists that well.
You're fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I completely forgot what we were just saying. What was it? What did you say before that?
It was
asking questions.
Do people ask for the questions beforehand because they're nervous? Yeah, so like that, I feel like more people asked me that initially because I didn't have as many episodes. Like now, if I reach out to somebody and I'm reaching out to them for them to come onto the podcast,
I will purposely link to certain episodes. Maybe it's like of colleagues that I think they know, like I'm trying to think of who. Right. Well, it's going to fail me in this moment, but somebody I reached out to recently to say like, well, here's a couple of other episodes that you might like to listen to, because I know that they're in like the same kind of, I don't know.
It kind of gives them a sense of what the interview could flow like, because they're kind of in the same sphere as that person, sort of.
That, but yeah, that are also like to send them somebody else in their same, for lack of a better word, cohort of ceramics, right? Like I'm trying not to just say age, like
age or education level. Like maybe they're a college professor and
geography, whatever.
Similar, they would know them because they're in.
Yeah, and the point has always been to make sure to have people on there who are a huge variety of business models and experience levels, because I got really tired of listening to other podcasts that were just constantly in hindsight conversations, right? Like How I Built This, for example, was a podcast I used to listen to all the time. And I got tired of it because it was constantly like, hey,
you're successful. How did you get successful?
Right. Yeah. And it's like, well, now, of course, the risk was worth it. You just sold your startup for whatever billions of dollars, like fake money level money. Like, of course, mortgaging your house at the time, now in hindsight, was all worth it. Well, yeah, 20 years later, you can find a silver lining in anything you want, like, but, yeah. So I have like some basic fallback questions that I'll send people sometimes just to try and ease any nerves. And I still will look at those if like conversation falters or something like that. But yeah, on the whole, it's a pretty organic thing. Now, naturally, as I started teaching photography, I talk about that on the podcast, or I've done entire episodes devoted to some of those topics that do funnel people into joining a course or, effectively paying for something. But that's kind of like
that's not the guiding light of the podcast. It's kind of a
tangential. It grows out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there if people want it, but it's not required.
Well, because it's also, there's only so much photography teaching I can do in like an audio only medium. Like, so yeah. But that was, to go back just really quickly to the point you made about it, like it does feel selfish a lot of times. Like I feel very spoiled in that I get to have these incredible conversations with people that are, I could have talked to Virgil Ortiz, for example, for 4 hours if we would have had the time, right? Like we can see him in person at NCECA, but he doesn't have that kind of time at NCECA. How
he's
else?
Bombarded, and he's got his own schedule going on, and
right. Like how else would I have ever had that conversation? And it was an incredible conversation.
Yeah.
At the same time, because I feel so spoiled about it, that's part of why we started to integrate into our community platform the fact that I'll share with our community members, which is like a membership site, who I'm about to interview. And then they get the opportunity to like research that person if they don't know them, check them out, and post questions so that like I can also ask other people's questions instead of just my own. So that hopefully it kind of broadens the conversation a little bit more than just what's on top of my mind all the time. Because that was the other thing, listening to other people's podcasts, is you start to just like see through the line of like, oh, this is really on this person's mind for the like month of recording these conversations. Can we hear about something other than healthcare?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So. Typically when I do a lot of the reaching out to people just because I'm not shy about reaching out to somebody and just asking them. I don't know if either I'll see a post they had, or there'll be something there in their stories or something that sparks in me that I'm like, okay, they have an interesting perspective on this. So let me just reach out to them. And I smooth them slightly because I just say, hey, I'd really love to have you on the podcast. I really like your, maybe it was your 2023 recap where you were talking about this specific thing. That's what I did with Will Donovan, which we just had recently. And I think it would be valuable for our listeners to hear about it, and we can talk about it more at length. And that's like a spark that I know I can get a good conversation and a lengthy conversation out of it that we can get in deep. And it would be on a topic that I have no experience with. They have some experience with that they can share, because I know a lot of people are like me that could value getting some of that. So that's kind of the way that I reach out to people. But there's also people.
Because we already knew each other, I don't know what my thing is now.
I think Becca was saying she wanted to have you on, and I was like, well, I also want to have you on because I want to ask you stuff.
I mean, besides Francesco, obviously.
Well, I wanted to have both of you on. But
I was like, why? I think mine was, why the fuck haven't we had her on?
She did say that.
I should not have taken a drink before Becca started talking.
That's true. I'm sorry. That was bad timing on my part.
It was fantastic.
I do regularly listen to your podcast, and the launch series, I think, was also a part of it, where I was thinking, ooh, I would like to actually ask her some questions about the business side that she hasn't touched on the launch series. And like, it gives me a different angle than just saying, like, you know,
let's get into it.
Because I wouldn't have as many photography questions and things like that. So
fair enough. Well, what is it? Let's get into it.
What is it?
I can't decide if I'm hot or cold, guys. This is ridiculous. Welcome to living in a 100-year-old house. My God.
Oh.
What is it? All right. Where do we start? So
he says this is if there's not bullet notes, Becca.
There are bullet notes. I'm just trying to think of the way to ease into them.
Okay, you don't have to ease into them. It's fine. Rip the Band-Aid off.
We'll start with how do you balance your workload of photography, podcast, business, and also like are you, it sounds like you're consciously choosing to do different things this year, because it sounds like you're going more into the Carra Terra this year than you have in the past. So how are you kind of balancing that right now?
I half laughed because many people would say I don't balance it. I don't have hobbies. Like I pretty much work and then we hang out, and I'm good about getting a decent amount of sleep. I'm not like in the studio at 1 a.m. like you are, Mr. Durbin. I can't do that anymore. I'm too old for that.
He also wakes up at 10.
Fair.
Yeah, 9:30.
Can we start? 10. We gotta start sharing that on the internet, because I'm like, I don't want to be like glorifying the hustle to people of like, come on, you can do it. Like, you're just a night owl.
I tell people that I sleep 7 or 8 hours. Like, people ask me, do you sleep? And I say, yeah, I sleep great. I sleep 7 or 8 hours.
Great.
Yeah, I sleep like 10 to 12.
Wonderful. You and Francesco are the same. Like, some people just like, that's whatever. Everybody needs different things. As many people know, I am very type A and very systems oriented. And so at one point, so basically up until last year being 2023, I balanced 4 different businesses. You shouldn't do that. I don't recommend it. It's not healthy. I know Becca has been through this in a myriad of different ways, because we talked about that when I had her on my podcast.
It's awful.
Yeah, it was too much. But I have always been very like pedal to the metal, go, go, go. And frankly, it wasn't until being in Italy in 2020, pre-COVID, having met Francesco and like really taking a hard look. And honestly, because of COVID, like as bad as that was, it also was the one time that my event photography business, which was the only business at the time, everything was put on pause. And I had a minute to be like, so what do I want life to actually look like? Like, you know, because I've always just like done what I'm supposed to do, done what I needed to grow, done, you know. Yeah, when something's not on the table anymore, you're like, okay, I can spend my time very differently. What would I choose to spend it on? I mean, the summer of 2020 was the first time I had Saturdays free all summer long in 10 years. Probably more than 10 years, because I worked for a wedding photographer when I was in college too. Which is significant when you live in the Midwest in particular, because it's the only fucking nice time to be outside. So like to have the summer be your busiest time of year is just insult to injury. But so how I was even able to do that was there's no way I could do what I was doing with all 4 businesses without having systems in place. It's just not possible. You know, I have templated emails for repeated questions, or even for things like post-production with photography and weddings and things like that, it goes into a task management. When somebody hires me, it goes into a task management system. The things I have to get done are automatically created. I log in each day and I just see what I need to get done, and boom, I know how to do it. Like, I'm not spending any time thinking about what I need to do, you know? So that in and of itself is huge. And that's for sure how I went from like having just me, myself, and I photography.com to having 2 separate photography businesses. And then from there, and I've applied the same thing with like the podcast or with, I mean, not really with Carra Terra. Francesco's the main thrower, but it's kind of like production pottery, right? You're still batching things. You're still being efficient with your time. You're not going from 2 pieces of one form to 1 piece of another form to getting up to wedging to, I'm going to wedge 3 balls of clay and then I'm going to get back up again and do it again, which would probably be sometimes good for our bodies. But,
I mean, I'm guessing you're probably driving a lot of the business tactics behind Carra Terra, right?
Yeah. Definitely, because I've got even though it's a new business, I've got 14 years of experience in terms of like client communication. Like, I was chatting with somebody the other day of like, I'm not scared of a bad review. I've got the thick skin built up to be like, we all will survive a bad review. You will get one and it will still be fun. I had a client once explain bad reviews to me in a way that changed my whole world, that hopefully is helpful for other people, which was, before he hired me, he said he purposely looked for bad reviews. And he was like, not to be malicious, but just like, you work, when humans work together, something can go wrong. That's normal. Mm-hmm. All he wanted to see was how I handled it. That was it. And it was that switch of like, oh, this is an opportunity to educate your next customer, right? Your next client, like to showcase something, because generally a bad review typically does come from like a crazy person, right? Like,
or it's something, it's something that's not realistic, or something weird happened and they just had too high of expectations and
something, right? Like, what do we have? I was trying to think of an Etsy example because, there's plenty of conversation examples on Etsy. But like, that type of stuff, that thick skin for that type of stuff can only come with time and practice. Like, you just got to put yourself out there and get through it, and it will get easier the more you do it. And I kind of already had that, even if it was in a separate medium, So for sure, in our own home, Francesco is like what we call like the CEO, if you want to say, of Carra Terra, because he's the main production potter. He's doing all of the glaze research and clay research. And, we're not going to make a form that he's not going to make at this point. Like, I can still assist and I can help, but I'm not doing a completely separate line or anything like that. Whereas I built a whole website. I'm doing the client communications. I'm doing the social media.
Basically front of house and he's back of house.
Exactly. Yep. So we joke that he married his CMO. Basically. So
pretty much.
Yep.
So that's basically how you all balance it. Is he still driving a lot of the, hey, this is what I want to do for the year, or are you all doing that? Does he have like the last say on like what your shows you're deciding to do, or stuff like that, or is it very,
we're pretty 50-50 on that. Yeah, I'd say we're pretty 50-50 on that. With shows in particular, so much of that is like a marketing thing in terms of we're doing shows in like the Chicagoland area, right? I lived in Chicago for 14 years. I already know what suburb I just already know what the like vibe is of a neighborhood or a suburb, to be like, those are probably where our people are, or maybe it's not, or it's worth a shot. I'm not certain. Whereas if I'm like, hey, okay, this is a funny story. He's going to roll his eyes at this. I'm like, is he going to hear me? I'm debating if I say something loud enough, he'll come upstairs and you'll get him on recording. you know, if I'm like, hey, we should make garlic graters, he will just blatantly, if it's an object he does not want to make, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So spoiler to everyone, Italian American cuisine and Italian cuisine are two very different things. And nowhere in Italy will you find a very small plate where you can grate garlic on it and pour olive oil into it and put Parmesan on it and dunk your bread in. I'm not saying it's not delicious. I enjoy that. But my very Italian husband is not going to make garlic dishes.
Right.
He is morally opposed.
I mean, it's better to just decide, hey, this is not going to be something I want to make, than to make it and then regret it. And
that's not to say we don't have things that we make to pay the bills, because we're both full-time self-employed artists. So there are just things that you need to make to pay the bills.
right.
That's for us. We have chosen, we both would rather have an object like that. So for us, it's the giant mug. It holds 24 obnoxious ounces of liquid. It's basically a stein. But
Gross.
as Becca has pointed out, we do live in the United States of America, and people love large everything, I guess. I don't know.
You can literally get arthritis from a fucking 24-ounce cup. Like,
Supersize that coffee.
Oh, the number of people who have said it's not big enough, I want to just like slap through the computer. I'm like, we're not making anything bigger than, like, just get up and go get yourself more coffee. It's going to get cold anyways at that point. I mean, come on. Honestly.
my mom's a 24-ouncer, and I'm like, go away. I just started having somebody else make her cups.
Yep.
I think Isaac makes a couple that are bigger than that, but they're very light, so they don't seem like they...
It's like 650 grams of clay. Also, everything's in metric. I have no.
Okay. So 600 is like a pound and a half.
Because
so
500 grams is a pound.
Yeah. So 600 is like a pound and a half.
Okay.
It's not a lot of clay. It's very thin. That is definitely part of our aesthetic.
Maybe a pound and a quarter. Pound and a quarter is 600. So
I could like pull up the exact specs if people really want to know. Or they could go to carraterra.com/shop.
1.32 pounds.
Yeah.
There we go. It's not a lot of fun.
It's not that much.
So anyway, so there's stuff that we make, to buy the dog food. I mean, that thing says that all the time, but that's just for us. We would rather still work for ourselves and keep our hands in clay and have time to do what we want to do because we have that one item. Whereas for somebody else, it might be that they would rather, go work for somebody else for a few hours a week to have that steady income and then make what they want to make. There's no right or wrong. It's just a pro or a con that you have to kind of figure out.
Yeah.
So with the business growing, had you been as involved in the business from the pottery standpoint with Francesco before last year, or was last year kind of the main year that you all hit it harder, or you marketed it more?
I don't even feel like I've fully turned on the marketing faucet on it, to be honest. That's part of why we did market so hard last year, is because I had started the Instagram. I had started things leading up to it beforehand. And this goes back to your original question about like, how the hell do you balance all of these different things? Some shit got dropped, right? Like I dropped the ball on Carra Terra for a year. I mean, we also were. So he came to the US in late 2020. We moved out of Chicago in the spring of 21. We didn't have a house for a little while. Then we finally got into Milwaukee in late spring of 21. There's a shit ton to do in this house. Many people have heard a lot about this. Mm-hmm. And so he did a ton of stuff in the house just to get the studio set up for the first time, finally, and all of that stuff for a lot of 21. And then our intention was to go harder in 22. And because I was still very much full-time in photography, basically all we did in 2022 was Etsy. That was it.
You're just kind of getting the production up and getting the inventory going
Just
and
getting
glazes. I mean, it sounded like he already kind of got glazes
Glaze
figured
research.
out, or maybe figuring that out.
I mean, he has a bunch of recipes from Italy, but that was high fire gas.
Right.
So oxidation reduction, all of that type of stuff. And so like then it was kind of like, okay, we're only going to have an electric kiln for the time being. We need to like transfer all different clay, I mean, all the things, right? Chemistry.
Yeah.
All
So
the stuff I
2023
figured out.
was the year that you
So
all
that was really
were
the
able to
main
really hit
big, yes. And even within that, you know, if people go to the Instagram, I didn't post but far from every single day. Shit. I didn't even post 3 times a week sometimes, right? Like it was very kind of best of intentions. I'd get going for a few weeks and then I'd have 3 weddings in a row and then we wouldn't post anything for 2 weeks and then we'd have a show coming up. So I'd try to get a couple other posts out that, you know, like it was just not consistent at all, which is ironic because I know that that's not good for, you know, I know what works. If we really wanted to push and have it grow, I know we need to be consistent. That's how that works. And so that's part of why this shift this year is me pulling way the hell back on events to give me just the mental space also, because jumping between different things, even if I'm really good at systematizing and working in batches, if I'm batching emails, if I still have to answer 4 different inboxes, that's like 4 different audiences, that's 4 different tones of voices, that's completely different issues in different places. It's just not.
You're context switching constantly, and it's a drain.
Context switching is exactly the thing, and it's just not gonna work. So yeah, so that's part of why we focused in on markets last year, was because, you know, Francesco could do the production. He had it ready. He built the whole booth. He would be the one to pack everything up. There were many weekends where I would have a gig either the day before or the day after a market. And so he was the one packing, going to U-Haul and we'd rent a U-Haul the night before we needed it because I'd need to have the car for a wedding because we only have one car. And so then he'd have the U-Haul an extra day so that he could pack it up while I was shooting a wedding. And then I'd get home at 11 midnight. He'd finish packing in the morning, let me sleep in an extra hour. And then I'd get up and get in the car and go and work the market with him.
Yeah. So how did the planning ahead of like what you all were thinking about doing for the year like happen in reality? Like, and if you look back on it, like what are you taking away from it and saying, okay, this is
this works, this doesn't.
This is
Don't do 5 weeks in a row of markets. I don't suggest it. That's number 1. I mean, that's just how it worked out.
And you both were you both at those markets, or were you still doing some of the events the same weekends while he was at a market? And
we could never do a wedding and a market on the same day because we only have one car.
Well, you said the U-Haul thing, so.
Yep. Well, but I meant like a trailer, like a 4x6.
Oh,
like attached
okay.
to the back of the Subaru.
Oh, he was loading that up while you were gone, and then you come up, hook it up, and take it to the show. Exactly. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it could have worked with a van or something like that. He's not crazy about the idea of having to like stand in a small talk, stand in a crowd with a bunch of strangers and smile and get them to come into a booth. Like that's not his idea of a good time.
He wouldn't sign up for the show. He would just be like, okay, well, you have a event that weekend, so we just can't do that show.
I mean, if it would have been a really great one, he was willing to do it, but there wasn't anything that came up that was like so, you know, if we got into like an Ann Arbor show or Lakefront Art Fest we applied for this coming summer here in Milwaukee is huge. It's with the museum, the art museum in Milwaukee. You know, if it was like hey, this is one of our top tier applications, it would have happened. But yeah, not his list of top list of things.
Okay, so no 5 shows in a week in consecutive weekends.
But as we had hoped, you know, doing shows put you in front of a lot of people really quickly. And that was the idea, because like Instagram is the long game, you know, like selling online is a long game in a lot of ways in terms of like growing an audience takes time. You know, I don't think either one. I mean, you guys both have way bigger audiences than I do, even at this time. Like that didn't necessarily happen overnight. I mean, that's been how many years for each of you?
A lot.
Too many.
I think I've joined Instagram in 2016, maybe.
Right.
I probably joined it in 2014.
So
2015.
You know.
Yeah, something like that too.
And even if you happen to have a post go viral or whatever, I mean, anybody who's had one that I've talked to has said like that doesn't equate to necessarily anything meaningful for your business, because it doesn't mean that you're getting gobs of people who are actually interested in buying pottery. You're just getting fed into the algorithm.
Yeah, I've got maybe 5 or 6 sales from something like that, but it's not consistent.
5 or 6 is not life changing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So we just had decided, okay, the goal is to obviously grow an audience, but also, I mean, Milwaukee and Wisconsin a lot of people don't necessarily know, there is like a very strong kind of art history here in Wisconsin, which is people don't think of because people think of cheese and the Packers. And so there is a network here of people interested in supporting ceramicists and artists and things like that. So we were like, we're just going to double down on the local community right now, because I can have the energy as an extrovert to show up to a market after a wedding. What neither of us were really feeling the energy for was having a consistent kind of quote unquote content creation calendar, right? Like of recording in the studio and making reels and making posts and all this type of stuff, which sounds ironic coming from the photographer, but like, you know,
you get tired of it.
Enough's enough, man.
And also the benefit of selling at shows, those people are already there in person. They don't care what your Instagram looks like. It's nice when they go away from there and they look up your site and they look you up on Instagram, and it helps. It helps drive a repeat buy maybe. Or hey, they're interested in something new you're making and they know where they can get it now. Or hey, what shows are coming up? It's not, hey, I'm here because of your Instagram posts. Like the number of people that actually come to my show because of my Instagram is so few and far between.
And so we've had some people, but I mean, the one thing I did know starting a new business right away, we started an email list, right? And so we also then were getting people who came from one show to the next show because I would email about it. And so we really wanted to, and I should back up a little bit and say, because Francesco has the 10 plus years of production experience, even before we officially started anything, we were talking about like, how can, like, that's a unique position to be in the marketplace, right? Like ceramics right now has a lot of people coming into it. Very much the way very much the way photography was when I was starting 14 years ago. Like I was the asshole 14 years ago who went to Best Buy and bought a digital camera and was like, I'm a photographer now. And I got a bunch of like lifers being annoyed with me, right? Because I was a 20-something girl who had a website who was like, I love my job so much. And, you know, whatever. If people don't know the stereotype I'm talking about, I can send some websites later.
You're it. If you don't know what stereotype, you're it. You're the one. No, I'm kidding.
Except red hair instead of blonde. But anyway, there's no recovery from that. I have no segue. The point being, what's happening in ceramics right now is very similar to what I saw photography go through in the switch from film to digital, and just the access to the medium being faster, more prevalent, more popular. Lots of people are interested in it. And so we had a conversation pretty early on from a business standpoint of like, what game do we want to play? Because that's, you know, there's the Instagram game, there's the Etsy game, there's the market game, there's the gallery game, there's the wholesale game, there's the teaching game. What else am I forgetting? You get the point.
Yeah, I was trying to think of another one, but you pretty much hit it all. I mean, consignment,
Workshops,
wholesale, overlaps. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's the same thing to me.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, all right, with both of our unique skill sets, what are we going to enjoy, and what are we going to like, but also what makes the most sense with our unique skill sets. And so for him having the production ability, the idea of kind of mass quantity is not scary, right? So we just, one thing that went really well last year, as you were saying, what worked, what didn't, is because of a market, and frankly, because of a shitty market. This particular market was a bust. We literally did not sell anything for like 4 hours. It was it wasn't like a known festival thing. It was a local thing. At an organic farm. They hadn't actually told, I don't think they had told people there were going to be vendors. It was an event that this farm did every single year. And this was the first year they were bringing vendors in, and people didn't expect it and also just weren't interested.
Yeah.
There was
to help anybody out there that's listening. How did you decide, like, how did you hear about the market? How did you decide that it might be worth you all doing it?
Totally. So we heard about it through somebody who met us at the farmers market locally here, which was like the first show we did.
Or a peer of yours selling?
An attendee? I don't think she bought anything from us. So
potential customer.
Strong. Yeah.
Okay.
We heard about it from her. It was like a 3-hour thing in a neighboring town, so close enough. It was a weekday thing. That was a big sell. That was a very big sell, to be honest. We also had, frankly, missed a lot of deadlines for bigger shows last year because we didn't realize that all those applications are due like freaking now,
6 to 9 months beforehand.
Like bananas. And so we had some open dates that we were just like, we don't have anything we don't have very much going on in July. We need a couple more shows in July just to get ourselves out there.
Mm-hmm.
That was honestly, and it was like, I don't know, maybe $50 for the booth.
Okay.
Right.
So like, cost, proximity, weekday, a month that you had flexibility.
Time. Yep.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a wonderful farm from a branding standpoint. It's in alignment with what we're looking for, right? It's an organic farm. It's a small business. It's local. It's, obviously people shopping in an organic farm, that's more expensive than Aldi. So if someone's going out of their way, if they're leaving the mill, it's about a half hour or so, 40 minutes outside of Milwaukee. So like you got to go out of your way to go get that. So there's a certain commitment to that craftsmanship, artisanness, whatever. So we were strategic about choosing it. It just was, it just happened to be a bust. Just didn't work out. But the last half hour of the show, the owner of the farm came. So we didn't sell anything for 3 or 4 hours, however long it was. And then in the last half hour, 15 minutes, the owner of the farm came around and was looking at everybody's stuff, adored our stuff, bought about $200 worth of pottery, some of which she specifically bought to give a friend of hers who is a chef. And that's how
I can see where this is going.
That's how we got our restaurant order. That is still a partnership, is a dream, frankly. That's exactly what we wanted to be doing. So that's what I was saying in terms of his like production ability and all of this type of stuff. Like, there's no way I could do a restaurant order by myself.
Right.
Like we can do a restaurant order because Francesco has the skills. Mm-hmm. He's got the skills. He's got the knowledge from glaze chemistry, and you've got to think about an industrial dishwasher and
I would
all this kind of
suspect
stuff.
You talking with them from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
You probably approach it a little differently than Francesco would, talking with him about, the system of how long it's going to take and, how to take payment, how much it's going to cost. Here's how many we're going to deliver. Here's the color options we've got.
I was perfectly comfortable saying, like, so when we do things like this, we take a 50% 50% deposit. Like I've already got the invoice system in place to take a 50% deposit to secure the project. And then, once that's paid, then we start the work.
I think that's kind of an unspoken, like, reason that people deal with you and decide to come back to you, is if they realize that you got your shit together.
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier for them, especially when they're satisfied with what they got. It was delivered on time.
Right.
Why would they choose to go elsewhere,
Right. Thank you. It is still a huge learning curve because I'm used to the under promise, over deliver mentality of like the timeline, right? Like I am very much in control of how long it takes to edit photography, like photos. I know how long that takes me to a T, down to like the hour, and I can control that. We all know clay doesn't work the same way.
And you're also promising things that Francesco's doing the work, so
also, so like before you go into business with your spouse, like make sure you have good communication and certain things. Which, side note, if anybody's thinking about like partnering with people, whether it be a spouse or a friend or whatever, I think part of why this works the way it does also is that we have very clearly defined roles. Right?
How do you do that? That was one of my other questions. How do you balance the work together? Like, do you have shared schedules, or do you have, here's a list of like what's coming up and here's what you need to be doing so that we can fulfill this deadline? Or
these are great. These are good questions, Ryan. And I would love the system side of me, the type A side of me wants to have a perfectly figured out system. And I personally have the perfectly figured out system.
If only
he that my brain
only you married the perfectly figured out system.
We do both work very differently. And so like I love Asana. I use Asana for everything. It's easy to like tag a person in it and assign them a project, and then they can assign it back to you, and et cetera, et cetera. And we use it a little bit, but Francesco is definitely still like there's a whiteboard in the studio and he's got a written calendar, and like it just works better for him visually.
He doesn't want to Asana your marriage or something.
I mean, I put house projects in Asana. We ignore them because that's not how.
Do you have monthly meetings to decide what projects are going to get prioritized that month?
I have friends like that. No, we don't go that far. We don't have a shared calendar even or anything like that. I mean, we're both working from home all the time, so.
Well, you share like events and stuff, right? You probably have that publicly shared between the two of you, so you know when the shows are happening and stuff.
No, not a digital calendar. We just both have it like down in our own spaces. Yeah. So it's not that, it doesn't go that far. No, I mean, the way that our like division of labor, if you will, happened is very much in alignment with just like the natural where we both already were professionals, right? Like it didn't make any sense to have him taking the photos of the pieces when I could do it twice as fast. Does
he say, hey, we've got these pieces coming for a restock, or things are going to be ready out of the kiln on Friday. If you can take photos by Sunday, that would be great.
Yep. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. And like with client communication, a lot of times for me, it's like, hey, I need to be able to give so-and-so an update, like give me a rough, instead of, it used to be me asking for a date. And now it's more like I need a rough idea of where things are at. When, when's the bisque going up? When is this project in this bisque kiln, or is it in another one? Stuff like that. There was something else I was thinking of.
How do you not interrupt during a day? Because that causes context switching, and he's got to think about this thing on the spot while you're replying to this email. And how do you all handle that? Because that happens in our household, and I'm trying to figure that.
Yeah, we're still working on it. We're still working on it for sure. There definitely have been times when, like, if one of us is really under the wire or pressure, it's like, hey, so right now I'm sitting in what is currently an office that is upstairs. on the second floor. I mean, it's like a renovated attic, so don't envision too big of a second floor here. Whereas the studio is downstairs on the ground floor. The kiln's in the basement. So there's also just physically a bit of separation. It's not like I'm not sitting on a laptop in the studio.
Yeah. And you're not texting him, hey, I need that update. And then it's ding,
no.
ding.
Yeah. No, because that's terrible. And frankly, it's probably a little bit more. I mean, it's easy for me to walk into the studio and be like, oh, okay, all of these just got trimmed, right? Because I can see them physically. And it probably comes a little bit more in the opposite direction of like if he is in computer mode downstairs and I'm up here at my desk, that's when we tend to. But also if things start to kind of you can feel them start to pile on where you naturally will then say, okay, we need to carve out some time after lunch Wednesday afternoon to touch base on where these things are at. Yeah. And that happens right now. It happens a little bit naturally. There's not a brilliant system put in place. That's one thing I want to do a little bit more this year is get things more streamlined so that we don't have to. I'm acutely aware of the stress that can be created unnecessarily if I'm having to go and say like, hey, when are you firing those plates for Birch? When's this happening? When's that happening? Right? Like you don't want. You don't want a coworker who's constantly bugging you about something like that, let alone a spouse.
Right. You're like, I'm self-employed, so I don't have to be micromanaged, and then I'm micromanaged, and I can't leave this person because I'm married to them. So
I share a bed with them. Right.
Yeah. And then you're like, then every dinner conversation is, hey, can I get that update on this thing? And it's like, I just want to have dinner. Like, can we not talk about work?
That for sure happens. We have definitely gone out to eat, like intentionally gone out to a restaurant for a meal, intentionally to be out of the house. And like, if one of us starts to go, so what about the other one? Like, nope, not tonight. Not tonight. The tricky part is that we each have very opposite, like energetic schedules. So I'm not a crazy early morning person. I am absolutely not one of those like 5 a.m. cold plunge crazy people. No offense to anybody who is, but you don't need to do that to be successful. Just FYI. Side note.
I'm offended. I'm offended by those people.
Oh, by those people. I thought you were offended by me. I was like, is Becca secretly a cold plunger? Like what?
She wakes up in the middle of her 12-hour sleep to cold plunge and then go back to sleep.
I'm actually a hot plunger. I hot plunge into hot tubs.
So. I support that.
A floater? You need the
I'm
salt.
a hot floater.
Zero gravity? The zero gravity?
Zero gravity? Yeah, that's the thing, right? Yeah.
I've never done that. I want to do it.
Becca, you probably love that.
There's one up in Sultan.
Sensory deprivation?
Yeah, no, that's what I think we should start a new movement called hot floaters instead of cold plungers.
I think we need a different word other than floaters.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny because
it's not
exactly,
good.
But plungers are used in a toilet.
It's true.
And
no, I just thought of like backwash. I didn't think of a toilet. I just thought of like the bottom of like the water glass.
Hot bobbers.
We can just lean into floaters. I can see that. Let's do it.
Hot floaters instead of
I'm
cold
here for
plungers.
I'm here for it. We're going to make it like next January 2025. Your New Year's. God, wouldn't it be funny to make an entire spoof like New Year's thing and then actually have it take off? That would be really entertaining to me.
There is this. Oh my God, I just found this.
Is it the TV show? No. Different.
No, I found an account of this girl. It's this woman who is so serious, but she says the most ridiculous things. So she's like, the first video that really drew me in was, she's like, here's how I spend, my husband gives me a monthly allowance of $15,000. And here's how I spend that on each month. And she like goes through this whole thing. She doesn't have a husband. She doesn't even get she's not rich. And like I went through like 4 of her videos and she's like, yes, I've decided to put I've decided to bake 500 loaves of bread today. And like, they're just absolutely ridiculous, but they come off so sincere that you're like, what?
I'm here for it.
Is this real? And I love it. It's so funny.
You need to send me one of those.
Yes, I need to teach the algorithm that I want that. Yes.
And she only has like 12,000 followers. I have no idea. Or 1,200 followers, like, or something like that. I have no idea how she does it.
She is soon to have 12,000 followers. It is bound to happen.
It's brilliant. People think she's so serious, and I just love it.
That's the best, and I'm sure the comments are pretty entertaining.
One of the comments was like, "You have $15,000 and you can't buy an iron." Like,
people need to understand sarcasm on the internet. It's shocking.
Hers is surprisingly unsarcastic, but it's just fucking gold.
Ooh.
Well, but it's like satire. The whole thing is satire, right?
Yeah, like, it's all satire, yeah.
Somebody sent us recently, also I'm just going to make a blatant statement that, yes, we've seen the accounts of the primary, I'm sure there's more than these two, but there's all the American girls who date or have married Italian men. I've been sent the Instagram accounts. So just like I've seen the things. And yes, you should not break spaghetti. But somebody recently, similar to Becca,
unless you live in a van, you don't have a pot big enough.
You get to do all the special things. But like there was something similar kind of an account that to this woman that you're talking about, Becca, that's like a guy who does cooking videos. I don't know if he's a chef. I don't know what.
I think I might know who you're talking about, but
I don't remember what the account is. Somebody sent it to me that not all of them are a joke. Like some of them are legitimate, it seems, I think, based upon like the 3 or 4 I scrolled through. But then every other one or every 3 or whatever he's like just taking the piss out of the whole thing. And so the one I got sent was like he dramatically mispronounces prosciutto. I mean, I don't know. He said like prosciutto or something. Like, I don't know.
Okay, that might be a different one. I'm thinking of a different one where there's like an Italian American and he drinks with a very strong accent, but he talks very sexually suggestive to these pieces of food that he's making, and it's hilarious.
Also fair.
And he's also enjoying them, and it's really funny. But.
No, I have not seen that one. This was like a recipe, like somebody's like voiceover to making a recipe. Yeah. And on purpose, there was one with prosciutto that was like prosciutto or something.
And he says it multiple times without even...
Oh, yeah. Oh, just deadpan. So then you're going to take the prosciutto and you're going to put it like... And it was just like, what is... it took me 2 watches at least to figure out that it was a joke. Because I was originally like, what the fuck?
He got you.
Oh, he did.
I also like, there's one guy, it's like he's a chef. And he's an Asian guy that's a chef, and he does these commentary videos, and he's rating different chefs, and I don't know how many he's done of this, but he like rates the chef. He's like, wow, this guy has Wagyu in his fridge, blah blah blah, like that's $5,000, and then he does the whole rating, and he's like 10 out of 10, and then he takes a bite of whatever that chef just made because it was him. Mm-hmm. He's the one that made the sandwich.
I've seen that. I've seen one of those.
Funny. Yeah, it's so funny. It like gets you right at the end. And you're like, motherfucker. Like,
I have not seen that one, but I have seen the one with an actual chef. Just it's like a stitch or whatever to all the like wannabe influencer, home cook, whatever. Like very much the woman with the husband with the $40,000 kitchen explaining a recipe, and he's like, okay, so yeah, now you've completely overcooked that, and then he just sarcastically is correcting everything.
Yeah.
And I think the recipe I saw was somebody doing like some, let's call it a pasta dish. We're using air quotes for those listening, where it was supposed to be like a 1-pan thing where she was pouring in uncooked spaghetti with marinara sauce into a pan that then had like, she had already cooked like browned ground beef, but then she put the fully cooked beef into the pan, and then it all went into the oven, and like it was bad. It was just bad. He was just like, yeah, that's disgusting. There's nothing. There's literally nothing in this. That's right. Anyways, we've gone down a rabbit hole, but it's fantastic, and this is what the internet should exist for. So
that's what makes it
we have
enjoyable.
30 minutes.
I know, and I
Yeah,
think
we thought we
Ryan
lost
still
you
has-
over there, Becca. It was so dark.
I thought
I
she
thought
was
it
just
was-
going to
I
take a
know.
nap. I rambled too long. She took a little nap.
Honestly, I'm so freaking tired, so me not closing my eyes right now is rough. I was like, maybe
did
it's dark
actually take a
enough.
nap.
Maybe it's dark enough that she doesn't notice that I am literally falling asleep, and it's not you. Promise, it's definitely not you.
I'm still a band nerd at heart, so none of me is going to believe that it wasn't me. Like you can't undo that from childhood whatever.
Yeah.
Self insecurities.
No, because I'm perfectly like, you're definitely not the worst interviewer we've had. Like, I'm perfectly capable of staying awake through pretty much most things. I think it's just like traveling all day yesterday and not getting a ton of sleep, and it's just all
Yeah,
that
you're in a
stuff.
different space, and I'm
Yeah.
sure
Can you-
Lloyd was not very enjoyable to deal with the last couple days.
He's okay.
Can you make me a badge for Nsika that says "not the worst"?
Yes.
Not
really
the
want that.
worst.
I want that.
You're definitely not the worst interviewer we've had.
That's what I want.
I think you're supposed to say interviewee. You said interviewer, so she would be you mean
Oh,
that
yeah.
that has interviewed you?
We got
Yeah.
it. We understood.
Not the worst interview.
Guest. I'm just gonna go with guest. That's
There you go,
easier.
Yes.
guess. That's better.
Not
It's
the
so
worst
much
guest.
easier. But yeah,
Okay.
Ryan.
Rebecca,
The
I
short
have a-
answer to your questions are that there's some things figured out, and there's some things we're still working on.
I couldn't even
also have a
remember what the
question.
question was. What was it? It was
I-
about-
Systems.
Oh, okay.
Systems. I have a question because Ryan's talked literally the whole time, and he's had most of the questions, which is fair because he's the best interviewer. And my question is, how do you guys pay yourselves? I would love to, like, do you pay yourselves like weekly, monthly? Do you pay yourselves separately? Do you pay yourselves together? Like, how does that work?
So we pay ourselves separately. We're both employees of, technically the business is an S corp.
Okay.
Rebecca Marine Photography was already an S corp, and so we basically have DBAs under that because I'm not going through the incorporation papers with the federal government all over again. There's no reason. Number one. Number two, as a green card holder, it was just a lot easier from an immigration standpoint for Francesco to be an employee.
Yeah, that
Right.
makes sense.
Because then you can show
Of the photography escort?
Yeah.
Or you
on
said
a
there's
on a federal level, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's
So
a
how is it
subset.
structured? It's the
So Rebecca Marie Art Incorporated is the federal recognized name. So like
Okay.
when we are putting together our taxes right now, that's the filing entity. Under that is like 3 different DBAs because I have another brand, like Gold Grid Studios is my corporate brand for photography. Then we've got the Maker's Playbook. Then we've got Carra Terra. But that's
And
just
DBA for anybody that doesn't know, doing business as.
So it basically is like if you think about your like your Johnson and Johnsons or all your huge. I'm basically the man now. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So do you have to, I'm guessing you have to do you file each of those separately with their own profit losses, or are they just
No.
Okay.
The whole point of it is that all I'm doing is filing one entity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like internally for us, we have our own bookkeeping that keeps Carra Terra income and expenses and Maker's Playbook income and expenses separate because we just want to know for ourselves.
And people can write you checks with the Maker's
With
Playbook
any of
on
those
it.
names. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But on a federal level, from a taxes standpoint, it's Rebecca Marie Art Incorporated.
It's kind of like Teresa works for Unilever. Unilever is the head company.
That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah, Unilever is the head company, and then we'll just go with the ice cream corporation of Unilever. So ice cream under Unilever is Klondike, Popsicle, Good Earth, and Breyers. Okay, so all of those make their own money, but that goes into a triangle into Unilever.
Into the big pot. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically, there's like a frightening amount of corporations out there. Like it's like an internal pyramid.
There's only 4, I think there's only 4 corporations, like food corporations, that actually own anything. You have Unilever, Nestle, Nabisco, and Unilever, Nestle, Nabisco, and Coca-Cola.
Kraft. Oh no, Coca-Cola. Yep.
No, I think Kraft's under Nabisco.
Are they? Huh? Because I thought Kraft bought
No, I don't know.
What's the Cadbury?
Cadbury?
Anyways, it doesn't actually matter. Like,
So Francesco is a employee under that, and you are as well.
so I am also an employee. We are each also board members.
Oh, I lied. There's more than 4, but there's not very much. Hold on. We've got Nestle, Pepsi Cola, Coca-Cola, Unilever. Oh, God damn it. Dannon, Kellogg's, General Mills, Associated British Foods. These are like
That's
all
a lot.
Whatever.
There's
They get the
1,
point
2,
because
3,
like
4,
under
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10.
Yep.
Yes.
But under those are so many brands that people would know of that they don't think of as being owned
Part
by
of
the same
parent
company.
Yeah.
Kraft.
So we each get paid a salary. We pay ourselves monthly simply because I don't want to run payroll multiple times. Like we're comfortable budgeting on a monthly basis. And so then I don't have to click the buttons to run payroll every other week. That's a little bit of a holdover from when I had a studio assistant, just in terms of, or like a studio manager when I had a storefront back in the day. So we use Wave apps, which I freaking love and highly recommend to anyone. Wave apps. Wave like the ocean, apps like an app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Highly recommend it and love it. Also, like even if you're not in like a payroll situation yet, their bookkeeping is all free, and I should get a referral link and send it to you. I actually don't think they have referral links now. I feel like I've looked this up. I love them. It is like, I hate QuickBooks, and I'm a person who loves systems, and I'm not scared of technology, and I freaking hate QuickBooks.
QuickBooks is hard if you get one thing wrong, it'll fuck you over.
Well, that, but also like, I mean, even the accountant I used to work with also began hating it because they are only now doing their online version, and she still had the desktop version, and she had to get the online version to be able to use the online version with me. They don't speak to each other, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it's a whole
Wave
on-prem
apps,
versus subscription model. They're trying to make more money.
Right. And she's pissy about it because she's already bought and rightfully so. I mean, she's already bought the desktop thing. Anyways, whatever. Yep. They're basically trying to like push towards users just using QuickBooks, and rather than it being rather than them be the middleman between accountants and user, and like us. Mm-hmm. And so she's kind of like, okay, you're shooting yourself in the foot with all the actual accountants out there, and that's dumb. But I digress. Wave apps, on the other hand, is like the pared down only what we actually need as small independent businesses version sort of QuickBooks. It's just really clean. It's really simple. It's robust enough to be options of what you need in terms of like having all of your finances in one place when it comes to expenses and bookkeeping and invoicing and profit and loss and payroll and whatnot, without being as overwhelming as QuickBooks is.
Does it still connect to, I would suspect the main benefit of QuickBooks is it connects to your accounts and all that?
Oh no, it does that. It does that,
and you can categorize things, and it kind of recognizes, hey, a transaction from this company is categorized as this, because I'm familiar with it, or I've checked it as this before.
I'm literally bringing all of our bookkeeping into Wave right now, and what's brilliant is that like as I'm literally doing all of 2023, which is not how you're supposed to do this, people. Don't do it. It's stressful. You should do it month by month. But this is what's happening. We're in like this. I worked with the same accountant for over 10 years, and she's gradually starting to retire. And so I'm going from like a done for you system to a DIY system. Mm-hmm. So it's a big shift, but I can as I was coming across transactions that I realized were going to be repetitive, there's a super easy search to be able to pull up everything that is Kentucky Mud Works and immediately highlight them all and categorize all of them in one go. It took like 3 clicks. It's fantastic.
And it'll do it for the past ones and the future, any future transactions that'll come in.
So like once I'm done with this last year, now moving forward in 2024, I'm not going to have to do any of that. It's already going to be done. So the bookkeeping side of it is all totally free. You start paying when you start using payroll. And so somebody's probably going to think it sounds really dumb that I'm paying for payroll when it's just the 2 of us.
No.
But they file everything for me. So literally are like like all of the payments you have to make for being employees, your all the things. I don't remember the whole list.
Whether you pay, because you pay quarterly or something like that to the state and federal and stuff like that.
Well, I'm talking just about payroll right now.
Yeah, just payroll.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant. Whenever you get a
payroll's not quarterly. That's sales tax. That's estimated and stuff.
Well, I don't know what companies do. I'm not an employee of the company,
So payroll, every time, if you think about ever having gotten a paycheck from somebody, there's things that come out of your paycheck before you actually get it. And those are generally associated with taxes in terms of federal and state. And so those things Wave automatically does for me. So I don't have to worry about filing.
They set it aside for you, or they actually pay it?
No, they file it. Everything's filed. So state government.
Unless you've filed payroll taxes, you don't understand how awful it is to file.
I mean, it sounds awful.
Taxes.
How often does that actually happen if you had to do that yourself? Do you do
monthly.
that yearly? You had to do it monthly.
No. You have to do that every time you pay. I mean, you can as fully self-employed.
You take the money out every time, but you tell the government once a month. So you take everything out, but you report it once a month. And it's like this whole fucking, oh my God, I used to do
government websites are garbage. Let's just make it. Government websites are garbage. And so even just having to navigate the sites and like the amount of time it would take me monthly to do this is worth the like $50 a month that I pay them or whatever it is. Like happiest money spent.
And that's based on the way that you have it structured historically, because you've been self-employed for so long. But if somebody's coming into it, it may not make sense.
I mean, payroll is payroll. That is just.
But I'm saying like somebody coming into being self-employed, it may not make sense for them to be an S corp immediately out of the gate.
Not an S corp. No, maybe not.
Yeah,
being an S corp out of the gate doesn't necessarily make sense. Payroll in general, I mean, at a certain point, the biggest recommendation I could give anybody who's just getting started immediately, like literally right now, please pause this podcast and go do this. Open a business account separate from your personal account with your bank and either get a debit or a credit card, whatever you are comfortable with for your own finances. That is a business card solely for business, separate from personal. Like that is the fastest and easiest thing you can at least start with to make a clear division of church and state, so to speak.
And it doesn't have to be a business account with your bank if you can't do that. Just get a separate account.
Just a personal checking account that's separate. Yeah.
Whatever. It doesn't.
Consumer account.
Whatever. Be savvy about, don't pay a fee or whatever, but just have these things very physically separated, because then even if you don't do anything all year long for your bookkeeping, it's completely separated and you at least can just download all the statements and there's your expenses, there's your income all right there.
Right.
Worst case scenario. That's step number 1. Absolutely. Step number 2 could be, so when you first start that and say you're just selling your stuff on Etsy, you automatically then are a sole proprietor. Right? So you are the sole owner, the sole everything automatically. The catch with that is that you're putting yourself potentially at a lot of risk should someone want to be an ass and say, for example, sue you. I know this seems like a really extreme example, but it's the easiest one. You make a mug, you sell it to somebody on Etsy, they use it for the first time and say that there was a I don't know, a bit of grog on the rim and they cut their lip and now they've had an infection and have had to go to the hospital for, I don't know, like whatever, just make up some crazy thing. As a sole proprietor, if they want to sue you, they can sue all of your assets. If you then, the next step business-wise would be, instead of being a sole proprietor, to be a different entity, whether that be an LLC, which is pretty easy, whether that be an S Corp, which is a little bit more robust. I can't think of what else would be after that because I don't know that any of us have that big of a business. Those are pretty much your two things. Becoming those things makes your business a separate thing from your personal life. So if something should happen, if someone wants to sue you, if you're in some legal situation, or even, I don't know, like the IRS or something, now your business lives in its own little bubble. Your personal lives in its own little bubble, and these two don't get to break. There is no Venn diagram. So you're basically saying if something goes wrong and someone wants to come after you, they only get to come after the business.
But here's the kicker. If you don't get a business account from the bank and you don't separate those finances out and you have an LLC and something does happen and you haven't done the correct like financial steps, then it's on you. It's
right. You have made a Venn diagram. You burst the bubble.
You're fucked.
Yeah, you're fucked. So and it's actually really easy to do the LLC wrong. So you really have to research it.
Rebecca, how did you actually set that up? Did you do that with your tax professional you worked with for the last 10 years? And you were just like, hey, how do we
I don't do that stuff by myself. I don't do that stuff. That is the best money outsourced is to talk to a professional about this stuff because there's so much stress. I mean, there's just, what price do you put on how much mental stress you have around, did I set up the business correctly and is the government going to come after me or is something going to go horribly? I mean, it's money well spent on that side of things. Some accountants, some CPAs might help you. Some might refer you to a lawyer. There's definitely lawyers out there that work with small businesses that do some of these things on fixed rates. It doesn't have to be like a big, scary retainer. You have no idea how much it's going to cost situation, especially now with like the creator economy or whatever. There are a lot of small law firms popping up that are like focusing on like basically us.
That's what they do. Yeah.
Yes. I was looking at a company called Counsel for Creators, counsel as in like the legal, so COUNSEL. I'm not sure that they would do this exactly, but there's also this time of year in the US, especially there's a ton of like Instagram ads that I get from little independent accountants all the time who are like, do you know what an S Corp is? You're losing money on your taxes if you don't have this thing. So there's a lot more resources now than there. I mean, I didn't see any of this stuff 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I got lucky 14 years ago in that my like dearest family friends are CPAs and own their own business, and neither of their daughters went into business for themselves. And so like their pseudo third daughter came along and they were like, yay, we want to show you how to do this. But yeah, there's so many resources out there now that like,
and I suspect don't wait until you prep your taxes and be like, hey, here's my taxes. Also, can we figure out this LLC thing? Like,
no.
Do that some other time when it's not during high tax season.
Yeah, get through this year and then come like June, reach out to a tax professional and they will be more than happy to talk to you. But payroll is just payroll regardless of your entity, and you have to do these things. There's no like, you can't not pay like unemployment, and unemployment insurance is like state level and stuff like that. That's not like insurance through an insurance company. That's like taxes. But Wave handles all of that. All I have to do is like put in our you get options. You can put in an hourly rate, you can put in salary, you can have 1099s. I pay my photographers through it. And so then it generates all the paperwork that I need for everything.
Sweet.
So are you guys salary?
Yeah.
Hey guys, so I'm coming to you from Washington. We're doing just a little bit of a different ad for L&L today because this is exciting. As you know, L&L will be at NCECA, and they do not have any specific buyers for the kilns that they are going to be selling at NCECA. They will be at a discounted price, and there's 3 kilns. One of them they're giving away. That's the E18S-3. That's a 2.5 cubic foot kiln. Those are giveaways. And then we have 2 other ones. The E23T-3. That's the most popular. That's a 6.7 cubic foot kiln. And all of these are cone 10. So it's a cone 10, 6.7 cubic foot kiln. It also has the Genesis controller. And that one... So, that one's up for grabs, and the EQ 2827-3 is a 10 cubic foot kiln. That's great for production. Also cone 10, and both of those kilns are going to be at a show price, so they'll be significantly reduced in cost. So, if you are interested in one of those kilns and you are headed to NCECA, please send us an email at wheeltalkpodcast@gmail.com, and we can forward that to L&L so they can get in contact with you about the prices. Yeah, this is a really great opportunity if you're looking for a brand new kiln, and if you happen to be close to Richmond or you're driving, it's a super great opportunity, especially because they're like already set up, and you can just put it. Last year we put Ryan's right into my van. So, all right, we're going to go back to the episode, and just remember, if you want to look those kilns up, you can go to hotkilns.com, and just a reminder, that's the E23T-3 and the EQ 2827-3. All right, have a good rest of the episode.
Yep. So we budget for our life on a monthly budget, and then I back into what that annual salary would be, and then run that once a month through payroll and Wave. And then we have, this is where my systems brain comes in. We've got all the spreadsheets. So we have a cash flow spreadsheet where you basically put in, you can put in the actual dollar amount in the checking account, but then we have lines to put in how much we're estimating we're going to make it's monthly columns. So we can look and say, okay, we know we have 2 shows in June. So I'm going to put in a guess of how much we hope to make from those. And then you can kind of see what happens for cash flow to be able to see
Can you use past years or past months as a gauge of how did I do in 2023 compared to 2024 and what can I expect?
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, good luck with this year.
Why would you say that, Becca? Shush. It's only January. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that. So I mean, to be blunt, obviously in 2022, when we were getting stuff going and just selling on Etsy, we still had income coming in on Etsy, but we floated some of the salary payment because of the photography, the event industry stuff. My rate for a wedding is a lot of pots. So that goes a lot farther. But yeah. So
then do you also, with the payroll thing, can you set aside the retirement funds in there too? Or does it go into your salary, and then you have to take the salary money that gets deposited and then decide to invest
Becca, can we just both smile at the systems Ryan's used to with how I'm
Rachel has an IRA, so I know the pot lands in our checking and I have to deposit it or auto move it. So.
No, but I'm thinking of the people who are used to the HR system of a larger
that matches the retirement.
No, I didn't expect a match. I wasn't expecting that.
You're also oh, everybody retires. Everybody puts money in a retirement.
Rebecca, do you save for retirement?
Yes.
Does Francesco save for retirement?
But that's so this is a little complicated.
Or how does that work if he's a visa? Does that make a difference?
It doesn't. What makes a difference is where we plan to be. Should we be able of a retiring age, right?
Like if you're going to be in Italy or if you're going to be here.
Exactly. I mean, we could still have an IRA here. I mean, you can still have an investment portfolio in the U.S. and live somewhere else. I'm pretty sure this is what like uber rich people do, right? I don't know. These are things. The financial part of international business is top of the list for 2024 for us to figure out, should we move. But no, we have a retirement fund. It is not part of payroll. I have it set up to just auto, like through like through Chase.
Yeah, you have your bank account and it moves money. Yeah.
Yep. So that is set to auto happen. It's not, as self-employed people, your max contribution to an IRA in a given year is, they just raised it to $6,500 a year.
That's if you make enough money, by the way.
I think it's 7,000 for 2024, maybe.
No, it's not. It's six. It
raised 6,500.
It used to be 6,000, and now it's 6,500.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Which can sound like a lot of money to some of us, but when you think about all the major, huge employers out there who have matching
401k max is 23,000.
Precisely. So, like, even if we made that much money, which we don't, but even if we had the ability to put 23,000 away for retirement, we don't have that option.
Right.
Literally, I stopped saving for retirement because in a traditional IRA or Roth, because 2 years I tried to contribute to my IRA, and 2 years my account was like, you have to take that money back out. Like, because you actually didn't
profit. Is that the
you
reasoning?
actually didn't make enough. Yeah, I didn't make enough money in my to profit any money, so I couldn't actually put in, because these were the years that I was trying to be even, and so I didn't make any money, so I made like $300. So it was like, you can't put $6,000 in your IRA if you didn't make $6,000, and profit that's the way it works.
But it couldn't have been if it was. So let's say in the
But it was your personal money, right? So what does that have to do with?
If you would have taken it out, if you would have taken out a larger salary for the year and then taken whatever that portion is and put it into an IRA, I don't understand why you couldn't have done that.
Because I was a sole proprietor, so everything that I made and everything that I spent was all the same. So
got it. Right. So yeah. So because also the whole retirement contribution stuff oftentimes is also a tax strategy, right? Like there are years where it's like, we're going to contribute a little bit less because mentally we want to have more access, want or need to have access to cash because we need to have access to cash, as opposed to we're going to contribute more this year because actually we made more than we thought we were going to, and therefore we want to put this into retirement to lower our taxable income.
Yeah, and also if you do your own taxes, you can be like I put in $3,000 and see how much it lowers your, like, what you have to pay and stuff like that. But also for everybody that's like, man, I should have done that, and you're listening to this in February, you have until April 15th to file your IRA contributions for 2023.
Yes. Pro tip, because that's also like, so we basically do like a little bit each month throughout the year, because the whole point of an IRA is like compounding interest or whatever. But then we get to the end of the year and go, okay, where did we actually wind up in profit? Yeah. Where did we actually wind up in income? If there is more than what we thought, do we want to then go and make a lump contribution? Yeah.
Right.
That's the whole thing. Do we want to use it instead to like pay off a loan or pay off a bit, yeah. It's a fun. You've got to have a different question in the last like 2 minutes.
I mean, I was gonna have a hot topic question about
I don't want to end on taxes.
To end it, but
that's fine. I just don't want to end on taxes. That's like a Like, hey
All
guys,
right.
come listen to the Maker's Playbook podcast because we'll talk about taxes.
It's that time of year. Let's talk about taxes.
Oh God.
I have an Etsy question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Ooh.
so y'all have
But also, Becca has to. Ryan and I could go marginally longer, but we shouldn't. I want to know what else Becca wanted to talk about before she has to go to
Ooh.
dinner. Sorry.
All I want to say is that Kraft Foods is one of the main people.
Oh my God.
And Mondelez International must have bought out Kraft Foods because they're formerly Kraft Foods is Mondelez.
Interesting.
So I think that it was like an international company that bought out Kraft.
Where
that wants
does
to get into
Velveeta
the
sit?
United States. Velveeta
Low.
sits within Mondelez. That's all I want to say, actually.
Okay.
Where are you going to dinner?
We're going to this place called Fred's. They have these thing called Asian nachos, which probably like very what politically incorrect or whatever, but it's fucking wonton chips with peanut butter beef.
That makes more
with
sense. I was picturing a bunch of
cheese.
dumplings or something.
No, wonton chips with cheese and peanut butter, like beef and a peanut sauce and fucking sriracha and cilantro and green onions. Oh, sweet Jesus.
Delicious.
I've been thinking,
Delicious.
I texted my friend and I'm like, doing this podcast and all I'm thinking about are these Asian nachos. And
That's fair.
and then she was like, I've been thinking about it since yesterday.
Fair. Well, I can smell the onions from downstairs. Like there's the sofrito mix coming up from downstairs. This is how Francesco knows to get me off the computer. Like the scents of cooking are rising. But let's hot take Etsy.
All right.
And if Becca has to leave, Becca, like, no offense. I take no offense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, pretty much I didn't actually have to be here for this podcast, so like I'm so sorry. The wine intake has really hit the wrong.
What we do is I will say, "Hey Becca, we got this podcast," and then sometimes she'll be like, "But you didn't even tell me about that one. Like you didn't want me to join." And then now she's saying like, "I didn't even need to join this one." So.
Well, sometimes he takes the lead, which I appreciate, and but I still like to be a part of it.
Well, if people want to hear Becca and I shoot the shit, then this is just where I say you do have to come listen to the Maker's Playbook podcast because that's what I'm trying to do right now. Hold on. See, this is where editing comes in handy because I can just like pause. There can be an awkwardly long delay.
I remember this because Becca was back in Indianapolis talking.
Yeah.
That
was one of my fun. I think
311 episode 311.
It's absolutely hilarious too because the podcast that when I was on your podcast, I actually had to go to dinner with Ryan, and
I remember
we had to cut it short. We're not at that type of a timetable here. But
all right.
but actually remember you have to cut it short because of Buzzsprout. It's not even me anymore. No, you don't have to Venmo us $4. We can go over. But yeah, like it's funny that now you're here and now I have to go to dinner.
Noticing a trend.
It's you. It must be you.
I'm noticing a trend. If I'm like, hey, let's hang out at Nseekan, Becca's like, oh, sorry, I gotta
go to dinner.
I got a dinner to go to. I've got a scheduled
right, really important
appointment.
Okay,
appointment.
Go. Otherwise, we're
okay.
There.
Okay,
I'm
y'all
so
have
impressed
the
with us
online
for
shop.
staying mostly on track.
Y'all have the online shop, the Etsy shop. You've
Mhm.
talked about Etsy being your pay the bills side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tend to not really talk about Etsy as like a selling, like, hey, go to our Etsy shop to buy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing you're doing that as a tactic to get them to your online shop so you can get
Absolutely.
off Etsy. Is that the intention, that you're going to get completely off Etsy at some point?
I don't know if to say like completely off absolutes.
Or what would be
Don't
the
know.
factors that would make
the
you
point-
leave Etsy too? Maybe.
I mean, look, Etsy is a business. Frankly, it's a piece of shit. I use like they're not everybody. any maker who's been making for longer than 5 years will be like, it's not what it used to be, yada, yada, yada. I agree completely. I use Etsy for exactly what Etsy is, which is a search algorithm. It's a search engine. That's all it is. And pretending it's anything other than that is why people get frustrated. It's like the trend once a year that goes around about Instagram being like, oh, it was so much, but everybody kind of whinges. And it's like, I don't disagree with you, but the $1 billion companies that are publicly traded aren't changing anytime soon. So I'm gonna find my way to play their game that works for me, to grow my business, and leave it at that. Because there's no sense trying to work against the $1 billion machine, unfortunately. Aside from going to protests, which I enjoy, but that's
and you
neither here
don't
nor there.
leave Etsy because your business couldn't sustain without it.
I mean, if there's a world that comes in the future where we're like crushing it and aren't a damn bit worried about the anywhere between, like on a slow month, it'll be $1,000 to $1,500 a month from Etsy. On a fast month, like, December, January right now is about $3,000 from Etsy, to put some numbers to it. Dude, that's going to sound like a big number.
What am I doing wrong?
Mine's probably 1,500 or a little less.
So that sounds like a big number for, numbers are all relative, right? So if you put that into perspective of having to pay for the life of 2 adults in the United States, Milwaukee's is a city. It's cheaper than Chicago, which is part of why we moved here. But like, if you think if you wanted to make, I don't know, let's go with like what, $50,000 a year, just because it's an easy number. $3,000 a month isn't paying a salary at that, right? When you factor out costs and shipping and packaging and yada yada yada, taxes. So just to put that number relative to people's minds, depending on where they live in the world. So all that being said, if we doing the markets and everything this last year, any audience I'm growing, I want to own. So I'm going to send them to my website. House, right? I want them to come to my house. I want to have their email address. I want to get in touch with them. I want to build a relationship with them in terms of like a ongoing conversation. So the audience that we are growing through markets, through Instagram, through local sales, through restaurants, they only see our website. And if I pulled up my analytics on Etsy, I can try to do it quickly. We don't drive any traffic to Etsy because, I'm not saying
you don't have it in the link tree. It's going to your website, and the only way is if people are already on Etsy pretty much, or Google Ads.
And we doubled down, actually. We changed our name. So what we realized was when people were searching Carra Terra in Google, of course, Etsy's a stronger website than our own website. So Etsy came up first. Etsy came up first, right? So we got rid of the name in Etsy. Our Etsy shop now is like, it's in Italian. It's like CT Ceramiche.
I saw that. I was looking in Etsy and I searched Carra Terra in the search bar, and I was like, it's going to pull it up because that's the shop name. And I'm like, it didn't. I think it was because I was already on my Etsy. I saw one of my listings, but I scrolled down and saw a picture, and I was like, okay, that's it.
That's the mug. Yeah. So we did that on purpose because I didn't want all the people we're meeting at markets and whatever to be like, oh, that one, what was that one? Like, it's Carra, ceramic, something, and then have Etsy show up first. Like, heck no, I'm working really hard to get those people. And so we changed the Etsy shop name. Now, when you do find it, the cover image or whatever, the banner image says Carra Terra in it. So you can kind of, but that's not for people who know us finding us on Etsy. That's for Etsy people to be like, oh, maybe they have a website, to try and get them off, right? Because you have to be careful with how you get people off Etsy. So we use Etsy for the search. So for people that don't know about your Instagram, they don't know about your markets, they're just going through looking for mugs. They know, well, because what happens when somebody buys something on Etsy, they don't say, Andrew Linderman and I were just talking about this. He had a friend, I think, Andrew, sorry if I misremember this conversation. I think he had a friend who bought something and he was like, oh, that's really cool. Where'd you get that? And they said, Etsy. And he goes, you don't remember the shop name, do you? You remember you bought it on Etsy. So they go back to Etsy searching for whatever the thing is they want to search for.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Let me do like I don't know. I'll do the last 30 days on our shop, right? If I go to visits and I go to how buyers found you in the last 30 days. I wanted it to give me percentages instead of numbers.
You have to go to the stats section, I think.
I'm in the stats section. Whatever. The obscene majority. So we have 1,254 visits from the Etsy app and other pages. The Etsy search. So let me just add it up. 1,800 basically. 1,800 visits in the last 30 days, specifically because of Etsy, whether that be the Etsy app or the Etsy search. Our direct traffic, I don't even know how we have direct traffic, so I got to figure out where I missed a link somewhere, is 200.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not sending, as soon as I see these numbers start to shift, if for some reason we start sending, if something goes wrong and we start sending more traffic to Etsy instead of Etsy giving us their traffic, that's when we leave Etsy. Right? Like if you are a known enough, if you're a known enough entity, if you have your own audience, then there's no reason to need Etsy except for a glorified credit card processor and the fact that they handle sales tax for you.
That's a big benefit.
Conversation for it is, except for the fact that you're overpaying sales tax because you probably don't have Nexus in half the states that you're paying sales tax to. Yeah. But that's a different conversation. So we use Etsy for the search engine that it is. And I write those listings in order to try and hit that search engine.
Mm-hmm.
So those sales that I mentioned, the like 1,500 a month or the 3,000 a month, is now we've started to get some traction on some other listings, but the gross majority of that is the giant mug, because people go on Etsy searching for a 24-ounce giant mug. It's also the audience that's on Etsy. Right? Like people aren't, if we were trying to sell our wood fire work, I don't know that we'd be selling the way that we do on Etsy, right? Because that's a bit more.
It's also unique. It's one-off listings. It's not a.
Right. We're doing production pottery. So that listing is replenished. It's used, if it goes out of stock, it's restocked. People get notifications about it being restocked. Like one-off pieces, I think you'd have to work a lot harder to get the traction on a place like Etsy with one-off pizzas the way the platform is now.
Yeah.
Because that's not what it's built for.
Are you paying for ads on Etsy?
Hell no. I will not give them more than a dime than the percentage they're going to already take from us.
Do they force you to do offline ads?
Yes, they do, because we make enough from them. If I could opt out of that, I would opt out of it in a second. I hate that. I hate that you can't choose to opt out of that. Pisses me off.
Did you see that they changed you can do direct, just because I'm too lazy, I don't have my own website.
Link.
The direct link. And
but I'm not using that anywhere.
I know, but I was just
I've been using it. I've used it for a long time.
If that's the only place you're selling your stuff, absolutely use that.
Well, I always liked that URL because it was way cleaner to put shopname.etsy.com. It's way cleaner than etsy.com/shop/blah. Number. Yeah. And then they started a creator.
I made the link, but
Creator Co. is a newer system they have where you can create a unique URL that gives you a commission back. So you get 4% back on links that you send.
All that's doing is encouraging you to promote them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all that is. But again, if this was, so here's the thing, for that whole 2022 year, when I was dropping the ball on promoting Carra Terra, all of our revenue came from Etsy. I didn't do a damn bit of marketing except get that listing ranking.
Mm-hmm.
And then Etsy did all that work for me. So I was happy to pay the percentage to them because we otherwise wouldn't have had a dime incoming, more or less, from Carra Terra. So in that sense, if like you know, if I was still at a community studio, if I still wanted to be full-time wedding photographer, getting on a plane every other week, going all over the place, and just make pots and just have the bare minimum of like, look, I just want to make pots for fun, but I don't have enough place to store them, so I just want to sell them with as little effort as possible. For sure, throw them up on Etsy, no problem. Use all the things that they're doing to promote it, because like you said, they're going to handle the sales, they're going to manage the taxes. You get like a 1099K at the end of the year. You don't have to worry about it.
You don't have to figure out how much shipping costs, what boxes you need. Like, the shipping is pretty nice on there. Yeah. I don't know how much you would have to spend on your own website to figure that stuff out and pay the fees and actually keep it going. I mean, you have to pay a minimum of probably $30 a month on a website to do that, like Etsy would.
We use Wix. We use Wix, which is one of the cheaper website platforms out there, and then we use Rollo. But we're using Rollo with Etsy and Wix so that all the orders are in the same place. You know, we go down every couple of days, boom, 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 package everything up, auto print the labels, bada bing, bada boom. But yeah, you know, it's funny because since we have a high ranking listing, and since we're listed as a bestseller and all this stuff, we get all of these emails from Etsy, right? That are like, your shop's really popular today. Be sure to capture customers by sending them a discount code. Or, hey, you had a repeat sale. You should send them a thank you discount code. And I'm actually going to, I have a screenshot of one of the emails saved because I'm going to make a reel about it. Because I laugh, like, we have to remember who's telling us what to do. Like, where the intention behind what they're telling us to do.
Well, yeah, they're going to make more money and you're going to make more money in turn, but they're the big company, so they're trying to get you to make more money, so they're giving you a slice of it.
But for those of us who, like, maybe for the new maker and the new seller who's feeling uncomfortable with marketing, who's feeling uncertain, who's like, how do I get this to work? The way they phrase it is very much like, this is the best practice. This is what you should be doing. This is going to work. This is how it's going to work for you. And if it was 14 years ago, I would be like, oh, okay, I'll do this then. Forgetting the person telling me to do this thing is a publicly traded company who's going to make a lot more money. You know, it's
And they've probably been doing more of those.
Like, you should be making reels. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because Instagram wants to keep people on the platform longer so that they can make more money. Like,
and I think Etsy's been struggling a little bit the last couple quarters because of all the discount codes they've been sending and the incentives to, you know, on these days you can say
their original base.
We're giving you $5 free if you spend $30. So, like, that's, to me, obvious that Etsy's struggling with their sales numbers, so they're trying to get more dollars going.
Maybe. I think they're also, now that they're a publicly traded company, they have to answer shareholders and therefore have to have a larger profit margin.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But they haven't been pushing it so hard as they have been in the last 3 to 4 months that I've noticed. Maybe it's just because I'm in the Creator Co. and I also see the, hey, we're giving you a free $5. Like, use it or lose it. It's free money. So
but we laugh at all that stuff because it's like, if my stuff wasn't selling, then I might consider a discount code. The time to consider a discount code is not when it's actually selling. I mean, every time we have stock in that giant mug, it sells out. And the thing that's really going to blow people's minds is every time it sells out, we increase the price by $1 or $2 the next time we restock. Nothing drastic, but it's $1, $2. Well, over the course of 2 years, it's gone from, I want to say we started out stupid cheap. It was like a $45 mug to start with, maybe 2 years ago, maybe 50. Let's make it less dramatic.
Is that including shipping or is that excluding shipping?
It's always included shipping because you got to play the Etsy game.
I don't think you have to do the shipping, but it's that, that's a decision to be made.
You don't have to, but the algorithm, this is what I started with. I'm on Etsy. I use Etsy for what Etsy is. Their algorithm, they blatantly tell you they prioritize free shipping listings. So if I want that giant mug is one of the first listings after the ads when people search for the terms that I have ranked for. So after the listings that are paid to be first is ours. That's not going to happen if we don't have free shipping. Now, for us, that's shipping included. We've factored it into the price. You know what I mean? But you're racing up a steeper hill than I am if the shipping's not included, because they're just not prioritizing.
Well, I think it's a factor. I don't think it's the factor. I think it's a factor with how popular your item is, your reviews on the item, how frequently it's been bought in the last 30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
But how do you get it popular if you don't have an audience? You already have a big enough audience that you're sending to Etsy.
Most of my audience is from Etsy.
Okay.
Most of the buyers,
how do you get it popular in the first place?
I keep putting work on there that lasts a long time, and I keep making work.
But that listing, I'm saying, if you're putting up new work, those are new listings.
So yeah, I mean, I've had to learn over time that having individual listings that last a long time are more beneficial for the algorithm than keeping one-off listings, because I've had a mixture of both. But like, you know, my shot glasses never go off the site. But like, I think if you're early on, you need to figure those things out. Like, I used to just individually list everything, and you sell things here and there, and it's like, okay, you're helping yourself a little bit, but I didn't learn until a long time that it's beneficial to have things that live a long time, either don't go out of stock, or they go out of stock in a certain color, and then you restock them when that color comes back in. But you kind of have to learn that.
So agreed that yes, because Etsy is a search algorithm, it's beneficial to have a listing that is replenishable, right? So when we're saying a listing that lives a long time, we're not saying that it never sells. We're saying a listing that has multiple items or multiple colors or whatever as a part of it.
The quantities of the same thing, or
Because so basically the way the algorithm is going to drive popularity is either in how much it sells, how frequently it sells, but also what Etsy has told us it will prioritize. Something like free shipping. There's potentially other things. We do. They've said it.
But we don't know if free shipping is the top priority in relation to how many people are buying it. Like,
sure, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying if you give me the option to, I'm trying to think of a good metaphor. If I'm trying to climb a ladder with a box full of pots, let's say, let's just go with me here, everybody. I can either try and climb the ladder with one arm and hold the box in my hand and see how quickly I can go up. Or I can put the pots in a book bag and run up the ladder. Both of us can still get up the ladder. It's just going to be a different amount of work, right? And so for me, it's the same for me. The amount of it's going to cost for me to ship the pot is going to cost, that's going to be the same. So I can either factor that into the price ahead of time, and also because we're doing production pottery, so we're throwing the same quantity of clay
going away and everything.
Roughly, we round up by a few ounces to cover our butts, right? So maybe I lose a few pennies on certain sales, but then I gain them on other ones because the ounces are marginally different. But yeah, and you're doing the same thing. I mean, all your shot glasses more or less are going to weigh the same amount.
Yeah.
And you're going to use the same box.
Right.
And so that price, we know our shipping and, our boxes and we use the same sizes. We've got set kind of things now, our compostable packing peanuts and all this type of stuff. So if the dollar is going to come out of our bank account regardless, because we have to ship the thing and pay for the postage, I would rather be able to put more pots in the book bag and get up the ladder faster. Because when we started with Etsy, we started a few years ago when Etsy was already the thing everybody hated, right? And so we didn't have the historical somebody who started 10 years ago when Etsy was great and they had a big audience and they already had, because I also think, I don't know for this to be true or not, but I wager a bet that because we have a listing that ranks, it will be easier to get other listings to rank, right? Like we're already at a bestseller
you're
status.
Proven, and if you have a star seller, I'm sure that has a factor of the algorithm too.
All of these things. And so for me, when we started, it was a matter of how do we use this system for what it is rather than fight against it? And they were very blatantly saying, we will prioritize listings with free shipping. It's not the only factor, but at that point, we didn't have the bestseller list. You know, we didn't have the frequency of purchases. We didn't have the popularity of the item. We didn't have anything else. That was one of the few things out of the gate we could say, all right, this is how we'll play by your rules.
Right. And you also didn't have, like, with you not putting so much focus on the Etsy shop, customers are not looking at your pot at a show and comparing the price of that to what's on the Etsy shop and saying, these are drastically different. Why are they different?
Well, and our price is the same.
It's the same with free shipping on Etsy as it is in person at a show?
Yeah, because the in-person at a show, I got to cover the booth cost.
Okay. So it's
the same. It's still the cost. I mean, you know, we could sit through and do the exact math to figure out dollar for dollar costs, but whether I'm paying shipping and packaging costs on Etsy to send it out into the world, or whether I'm paying $300 for a weekend plus our time of manning the booth, if you think about your salary, it probably comes out pretty close.
So you would calculate the same. You would say I don't know, what's your giant mug right now?
So it's gone from in 2 years, it's gone from 45 to 70. We just increased it. It was at 67 or 68 like a week ago.
Okay, so $70 mug on Etsy, they can buy it. Yep. And then at a show, you would sell it for $70.
We might have it. I mean, maybe we don't have a show anytime soon. For Christmas, I want to say we had them at a show at like 60, but on Etsy, they were at 65 for a little while just to see. Also knowing that at Christmas it's the most popular time of year for people to buy stuff, and so to have it be more expensive on Etsy, we weren't worried about it because it was proven to
you're
sell.
Like, so I mean, it is that like separate.
But here's the thing: our goal is to sell our pots in a way that is morally correct for us, right? That feels good for us, so that we can live the life that we want to live, that we can support our families, that we can donate to causes we believe in, that we can be hopefully some kind of positive impact in the world, right? If you start creating confusion in people's brains, people aren't going to buy anything. So if you have one price in one location and a different price in a different location, and then they see that at a certain point and go, well, wait a second, hold on. Like, it doesn't, one, it causes confusion. Two, to the person who paid more for it in one place than the other place, is then they feel shitty and they're like, well, why do I want to buy anything from you again in the future? Right? So ultimately, where our price structure comes from is we first and foremost figure out what's the wholesale price we need to sell. Right? So if we were to sell this at wholesale, what do we need to make in order to survive? That's the first price to figure out. Because frankly, selling on Etsy is very similar to selling wholesale when you factor in all of their percentages and their fees and whatever. For me, it's not all that different. Also, because when you're selling wholesale, nobody else is learning your brand. They're learning the brand of whoever they're buying from. So similar in any selling environment, there is a cost to that sale, whether that be because you're only charging 50% of the retail price and the wholesale partner is selling at retail, whether it because a website is charging fees and then you have to pay shipping and packaging like Etsy, whether it because we're selling in person and we have to pay a few $100s for a booth, and then we also have to cover our time while we're sitting there, whether we're selling or not. Any of these places, and I'm trying to think of another example, any of these places, you're losing an amount of what for the $70 mug, we don't have $70 in our pocket to go to our salary and our IRA. We have maybe 35 by the time you take out all of the other expenses.
Yeah.
And on any platform, virtual or in person, you still have those costs. So for me, it doesn't make any sense to make your life doubly complicated by having the Etsy price and then the inventory on Wix and on our website and then that price and then the show price. That's just.
Well, the online, like, you're going to have to ship it regardless. So it makes sense to charge it. Mm-hmm. But I get what you're saying. You're saying like the labor is spent elsewhere. So where you're not paying for a shipping service and the labor to pack it, you're still spending labor elsewhere to get the piece to the customer. So it just has to be factored in. So, and maybe, I don't know if it's just because of the small business and we're just solo employees and we're just like, why do we overthink this pricing thing and how much detail and how much explanation we have to have behind our prices and why we charge what we charge. But I feel like in a sense, you have to have confidence in why you charge that.
Yes.
And you can explain it a bunch of different ways. Like, we've said it in the past that 50% is wholesale and then 50% is, I would say, like marketing the pot or like, getting
operations.
Getting it to the customer. And if that's like the simplest way, and then you can say, well, sometimes there's shipping costs added onto that, or I don't know.
Most of us are uncomfortable. Most of us are kind of wiggling around on this pricing because maybe, talking about money is uncomfortable, potentially, culturally. We are uncomfortable with valuing our own time, right? To put it in really stark comparison, 14 years ago when I started my business, prior to that, I was working in the nonprofit sector, right? I was doing direct service with at-risk kids. I didn't get to decide my salary. I got to accept, I said yes to the contract I had, but there wasn't like a big negotiation or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I was just doing meaningful work and then, it provided for basically. To go from that world to the world of self-employment where I had to be the one to dictate how valuable my time was, frankly, was a mind fuck.
Right.
It was so uncomfortable. It was excruciating for me to sit in front of someone and be like, well, my time is worth $75 an hour, $100 an hour, $200 an hour, right? I ended with a question mark.
Hour?
It wasn't until I got really clear on the numbers of the cost of running a business, of thinking about like, if I was still a graphic designer and sitting in an office somewhere, how much salary would I make? Like, I'm not talking about figuring out numbers to go be a billionaire. Like, I don't think the world doesn't need more billionaires. Like, no, a billionaire shouldn't exist, frankly, but that's a different story. Like just a reasonable living, because there was a period of time for a very long time, like I struggled to increase paying myself for many years, to the detriment of like, it took me realizing after being out of college for, I don't know, like 10 years, that had I been a graphic designer and sat at the desk and worked the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, had I worked for the same company for that many years, at that point, I would have gotten an annual salary increase. I would have gotten X number of vacation days. I probably would have gone on a damn vacation,
right.
Because
otherwise you lose it, right? You have to take it.
Well, that, but also just like the lifestyle would have been, and I'm not saying like I don't care about owning a Gucci purse or whatever, but it's more just like I would have been able to comfortably buy groceries and put away a little money for retirement and like do a reasonable middle class kind of living. And so looking at the number of like, what is that salary for wherever you live to have that life? What does that then mean that your time is worth hourly? What does it cost in terms of operations and materials and shipping and packaging and taxes and all of the fixed costs that your business is going to have when you sell a pot? And then being able to get to pricing from that standpoint, is the number might still be uncomfortable, But it's a lot easier to be like, yeah, my time is worth $325 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Period. No question mark. And it's not because I looked up what some other photographer was charging or I Googled how much whatever. It's because I looked at the numbers and went, if I don't make that, I can't go buy groceries.
Right. And also, you're limited on the number of weekends. Like, you physically can't work more than X number of weekends because that's all the time you have available.
Also, which is the same for pots, right? Like, I defaulted to photography, but like, you physically can only, I mean, even at the speed that Francesco can throw pots, it's not the life that we're aiming for is not for him to be in the studio for 8 hours a day, throwing, literally sitting there, boom, boom, one pull cylinders over and over and over again without breathing. Like, that's not healthy either.
Right.
And then, you might have some markets that rain out. You're going to have slow months. Like, we have to sell more in November, December, January to make up for the fact that in, August, you're not going to sell as many pots.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's more nuanced pricing that once you get comfortable, then you start factoring these things in, which is why, or alternatively, just to complicate matters for everybody, there's if you're starting to have multiple items that you're selling, you're going to have different profit margins on different items, right? Like, the demand for the giant mug right now is stupid high, and therefore, our profit, because we keep selling out, we can slightly keep increasing the pricing, and therefore maybe eventually that profit margin is going to be higher than, for example, the utensil holder that we are gaining popularity on,
Right.
which is heavier to ship. So it costs more in packaging. It takes a hell of a lot more clay than what the giant mug does. Right now they might be at the same price point, but the profit margin is completely different. But maybe one item brings somebody in and then they get another item later. And so your margins aren't the same on every single item either.
Right. As well as you don't want to only spend your time making giant mugs. So even if you said, well, my mug has to be proportional to the bigger pieces. So it's like, I can't make 400 of these mugs every week. You have to supply and demand a little bit and adjust it. And like, okay, if I can confidently say I'm going to sell this at $60, then try it at 65 and see if it keeps selling. And you kind of find that sweet spot of where you slow down a little bit. And it's like, okay, maybe we found a spot.
Right, exactly. I mean, if we get to a point, the only reason we keep, number one, it's a lot easier to inch your price upwards by singular dollars or a couple of dollars, because then you don't have that mental stress of like, oh my God, I'm going to double the price because I just did the numbers that Rebecca said, and that's what I have to do. But oh my gosh, that's too much. Like, do you notice when milk goes from like a 50-cent swing? I don't know. I mean, depending on the season of life, you might notice. That's fair. I sure as hell notice when gas prices change. But like, there's certain items that like I couldn't tell you what the price, if the price of my toothpaste was the same between when I just bought it and the last time I bought it. Right. So that's a better comparison, because milk and eggs and gas and whatever we buy far more frequently. Someone's not buying the same person is not buying
shampoo or toothpaste or
like, I don't know if it doubled in price, I would notice. Right. But if it was like 50 cents different, $1 difference, I'm probably not going to notice. And then, so then that way, like, we're also retaining an audience or gradually moving into another one. From that standpoint. There was something else I was thinking of, but I just forgot. Also, because we all knew we were going to go over time.
Yeah. I think I've naturally changed the prices.
We should both eat dinner.
Yeah. I think I've naturally changed the prices, just a little supply and demand, I'm not going to be able to make as many next year. So I need to, I pretty much bump my things about a couple bucks every year. So it's that time of year. I got to bump these. And there's
know what
certain
it
forms
was.
that I'm like, okay, I can increase these maybe a little quicker than the other ones, but
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're not doing this with every single item across the board.
yeah.
We're doing this as things sell faster and as popularity increases, and it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm like you said, we don't want to spend all of our time only making giant mugs. If we raise the price, sell a little bit less, but earn the same amount,
Right.
we're in a good place. It was Kate Schrader, who was also on my podcast, who was saying that she was saying every time she sold out of an item, the price increased. And I had a business coach once who was saying, if you're selling out that quickly, the price is too low. Like selling out, everybody thinks selling out is the goal because it feels good, because it looks good, it's good for our ego. But like you like from a pricing psychology or whatever, like you want to find that sweet spot where you do sell regularly and you feel, and there's an audience there and it's proven in the market, but at the same time there's going to be some people that say no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Like
that's
what
expected. Yeah,
is not for everyone.
Yeah, something's wrong if you're selling everything. Like if you went to a show and y'all sold everything out, you'd be like, we're fucked. We have another show in 2 weeks. What are we gonna do?
I would be fucking thrilled though, so I'd be perfectly fine with that.
You'd be
There's nothing
we're
more
canceling.
Painful. Well, we just go into full fledged. You've never seen Francesco go into full production mode, man. It is a sight to be seen.
Like we could get a booth together in 2 weeks, but
he could totally, absolutely, not a problem. Like
y'all have a little more aesthetically pleasing. It's not full as mine have been from what I've seen from your all's booths. Your all's are a little bit, there's a little more negative space.
Oh, but the stock is in the back.
Oh,
there's plenty of stock to refill.
Yeah.
We're not putting every object we brought out at the beginning, right? Something fills, I might let that spot stay open for a little while so people see that things are going. And then I'll put another one out. Like, oh, absolutely. Yeah. But no, I more so mean like there are days where I get a little stressed of like, oh my gosh, we have to get this order done by this time. The shelves are empty. There is nothing. I come up here and answer emails for like an hour. I go downstairs and poof, shelves are full.
That's great.
Because it's just like when he turns it on, it's go time. So yeah, if we sold out in a market, that would be freaking brilliant. And we've never done that.
And it also sounds like he's willing to keep making the giant mugs. Like he hasn't had a breaking point of like, you know what, I'm done with this. Like I don't want to keep making there's an understanding that like, hey, this is paying the bills and like keeping us going. So we understand that making these $70 mugs allow us to make these other things that we enjoy or do these shows that we can risk a little bit more with not knowing how it's going to go.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said at the beginning, we both have the mentality of we would rather have an item that we're making that we get to be in charge of that pays the bills. And then we can kind of control how much time goes into that. So control how much stock we have, like before when we first started with Etsy, when it would sell out, we'd turn around and make sure that there was more right away. And like it kind of controlled the making cycle. And that didn't feel good. That got to a breaking point of kind of like, I don't want to keep doing these. And so then instead what it became was, all right, I'm going to make a fixed number every month. That's a manageable number. That's going to be this much of my time. That's going to be this many days out of the month. And then when it sells out, it sells out. And I will make the next batch on that day that I've already set aside every month to do. Because we know if I make X number I don't know what the math is in front of me right away. Yeah,
that's going to potentially be X amount of income.
Exactly. And I can expect
that's probably going to sell.
That's a steady thing, and that's good. So yeah,
does that tend to work
has helped. That has helped a
too?
lot with the control of like keeping away the burnout in terms of letting the seller item just completely overtake your life.
Yeah, I like that strategy.
Yep. So that feels like I'm gonna
That's
flip
a good
the tables.
Point.
Exactly. I was like, you gotta not have a follow-up question.
All right.
Because we
Rebecca,
gotta eat dinner.
if people want to hear more conversations like this, or
Yes.
find out more about your pottery business or otherwise, how do they find you?
Absolutely. So the website is makersplaybook.com. That is currently going through another iteration, as websites do. So it's a little bare bones. So another probably particularly great spot is to just come on over to Instagram at themakersplaybook.com. My
It doesn't
profile
have
picture.
.com in your Instagram.
Oh God, I just said Instagram.com. See?
No, you said
I need dinner.
Come up to
I need
Instagram
dinner.
at themakersplaybook.com.
Yeah. See, the blood sugar, the mental, I gotta go eat.
Playbook on Instagram.
Let's do this again. The website is makersplaybook.com. The Instagram is the Makers Playbook. End. Awesome. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Becca from afar, because she went to eat dinner.
She was like, I'm out. I need some wonton chips.
Oh yeah, that sounds delicious.
All right. Thank you so much. And hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another episode of Wheel Talk. This podcast is made possible through the contributions of all of our listeners who always ask us great questions, leave us reviews, and contact with us through social media. Thanks to all the fellow makers as well who take time to be interviewed and share about their lives and businesses.
And thank you to Ashley from Boldover Ceramics and Lindy from Lindy Garner Ceramics for their assistance on the Wheel Talk Podcast Instagram. You are invaluable. Thank you to everybody.